Chapter 16:15. Hey, how can this be called twisted logic? This is called truth. Jiang Pengji laughed. I've never heard of such logic. As she spoke, she glanced at the friendly classmate. He was wearing brocade clothes, and she could tell that he was the foolish son of a rich family. He was the classic example of a foolish person with a lot of money. If not, who would be willing to spend a lot of money to draw fire-avoiding pictures on bamboo paper? Wasn't that just burning one's hands with too much money? If one had the money to buy paper figures, they might as well look for the real person. Which pretty girl in the red light district couldn't get one? The paper figures were fake, but the real person could still see, touch, and smell them. In the words of the audience, the person in front of her was probably an otaku who was addicted to 2D figurines. He would rather spend a lot of money on the paper figures than spend it on the real person. Jiang Pengji had a good eye. The person in front of her was just that. The friendly classmate said, "Haven't you heard of it now? You're still young. You'll know when you're older." Jiang Pengji was speechless. She might look like a 13-year-old, but she was in her 40s. Wasn't it ridiculous for a little kid to say that to her? Jiang Pengji sized up the other two with her peripheral vision. Unlike the silly duosu beside her, who was wearing brocade clothes, the other two were obviously ordinary or even poor students. This could be seen from their clothes, the way they dressed, the skin on their hands, the thick calluses on their palms, and the incense they used. She was surprised. Since she transmigrated to this world, she had seen a clear division between the rich and the common people. It was rare to see people of two classes get along well. The one with the best background was the silly duosu beside her. His surname was Jiang, his given name was Mo, and his courtesy name was Benji. The slightly inferior one was Mashio, and his courtesy name was Jiqing. The most ordinary one was Fangji, and his courtesy name was Byuku. After a deeper understanding, Jiang Pengji finally understood why the three of them could get along so well. Jiang Mo liked to collect all kinds of pictures of beauties and fire-avoiding pictures. He was willing to spend a lot of money for the pictures he liked. It was said that in order to correct his addiction to 2D, his parents did not hesitate to put 5 or 6 beauties in his room. They had slender waists, big breasts, and perky buttocks. However, Jiang Mo refused to look at them. He was obsessed with the paper figures every day, as if he was possessed. Mashio's family had dozens of acres of fertile land, so he didn't have to worry about food and drink. Occasionally, he could even help Fangji, who lived in the same room as him. Fangji's family background was the worst, but he was good at painting. He was almost as good as Wei Ci, who was the best painter in the academy. Both of them had their own style. Fangji could accurately capture the characteristics of a person, and could draw them vividly with just a few strokes. In order to earn some extra money, he would occasionally accept some orders, such as the fire avoidance diagram. A few days ago, Jiang Mo spent a lot of money to buy the best bamboo paper and gave it to Fangji to draw the fire-repelling painting. Fangji had spent a lot of effort on this order, and it had just been completed not long ago. When Jiang Mo heard the news, he immediately woke up from his sleep and rushed over to inspect the goods. The academy didn't allow anything like the fire-repelling painting, not to mention that Fangji's drawing was very sexy. The three of them were sneakily handing over the stolen goods, in a secluded area. Who knew that they would bump into Jiang Pengji, who was carrying the drunken Lu Jing back? Look, you've seen it now. You can't just casually talk about this. Although Jiang Mo was born into a wealthy family, he was not very courageous. To put it bluntly, he was a bit of a coward. Jiang Pengji said, "So what if I did?" Fangji's face paled. Jiang Mo said, "If you say it, the three of us can testify against each other and drag you down with us. Just look at you and LV Xiaoyin's makeup and the smell of alcohol on you. It's obvious that you just came back from the red light district. If we can't escape, then don't even think about escaping." Because each of them had something on the other, they hid it from each other and actually used it to shorten the distance between them. Lu Zheng was completely muddle-headed and entered the camp of the bandits, but Jiang Pengji found Jiang Mo and the other two to be quite fun. Teenagers of this age all liked to brag. Jianghu, for example, claimed that he had been through hundreds of battles even though he hadn't even given his virginity to anyone. When they started to talk dirty, each of them blushed at Jiang Pengji's words. They had no actual combat experience and no theory, yet they still learned to brag. Old CG taught them what it meant to be a high level. I know a drawing method that not only looks good, but it can also make people move. Jiang Imo asked curiously, the drawing can move? Fang Ji was also curious. Jiang Pengji explained the most basic drawing method, and the three of them smiled meaningfully. Lu Zheng, who had been dragged down with him, folded his arms coldly. Ma Xiao and the others loved to study, but Jiang Pengji and Jiang Imo preferred to skip class. When they heard that there was a girl with outstanding beauty, the two of them would always go over to take a look. You don't like real people, why are you so enthusiastic? Jiang Imo said, people have flaws, but they also have strengths. If everyone's different strengths were combined, wouldn't they be perfect? Jiang Pengji was speechless. To put it bluntly, it was for the sake of her paper dolls. If she collected too many materials, there would always be unexpected incidents, such as the little tyrant kidnapping a girl. Lu Zheng wanted to keep the peace, but Jiang Pengji couldn't bear to see the little tyrant be so arrogant, and she couldn't bear to see the beautiful girl fall into the evil hands. What do you plan to do? That family is nothing, but this is Langya County, not Hejin County. The magistrate of Liuzhou is far away in Chongzhou. How can he protect you? Lu Zheng and Jiang Pengji had known each other for a long time. He knew that she had a bad temper and it was a headache. Jiang Pengji said, a man dressed up as a woman. Tonight, all of you wait for a good show. She changed into women's clothes and entered the little tyrant's manor. She tied the whole family to the beam of the house and whipped them. The four of them were stunned by her actions. Lu Zheng took out a handful of melon seeds from his sleeve. The four of them lined up and leaned against the low wall to watch Jiang Pengji's passionate performance. The corner of Ma Xiao's mouth twitched. You actually brought this, Lu Zheng snorted. Teacher gave it to me yesterday. It was newly cooked by the master's wife. If you don't like it, don't eat it. I want to save some. How could the three of them dislike it? They each grabbed a handful and started munching on the melon seeds. All right, you guys. My hand hurts from whipping, but you guys are enjoying the show. Jiang Mo laughed. You can't say that. You used your hands, but we used our mouths. Everyone worked hard. Lu Zheng said, I couldn't tell, but you look pretty in women's clothes. Without waiting for Jiang Pengji to refute, Jiang Mo said, is Lanting's appearance considered pretty? If I were to dress up as a woman, I would definitely be prettier than him. Lanting doesn't look like one at all. He should at least find a few steamed buns to pad his chest. Look at his pea-shaped body. I wonder how the little tyrant's eyes worked. He didn't notice anything unusual. The young lady he had his eyes on has all the qualities she should have. Jiang Pengji was speechless. Ma Xiao laughed. If Lanting is a woman, then her husband is most likely interested in men. Fang Ji also said, not necessarily. Maybe she's a woman who likes to polish her mirror. Jiang Pengji laughed coldly. Chapter 16:16. Jiang Pengji was prepared to attack Nanxing, and the first to bear the brunt was Yang Tao's former territory. The ones who were most worried weren't in Shui and the others, but the aristocrats who had betrayed Yang Tao. They were burning with anxiety. How could they not be anxious? The group of aristocrats had been bewitched and recruited by An Shui. To be precise, they had been attracted by the pie that Lu Zheng had drawn. They were blinded by greed and dizziness. They gritted their teeth and abandoned Yang Tao, who had lost his power. Not only had they led their troops to rebel against Yang Tao, but they had also forced Yang Tao to the brink of death several times. They had been so resolute not only to eliminate Yang Tao, but also to show their loyalty to the new master by stepping on their old master. They had thought that An Shui would fulfill his promise after doing so well. They hadn't expected him to burn the bridge after crossing it. Only 10 to 20% of the benefits that had been agreed upon had been fulfilled. The rest had been delayed until there was no sign of them. No one dared to urge them. And Shui even pretended to be deaf and dumb. It was obvious that he was going to renege on his debt. To put it bluntly, this kind of unspoken behavior was akin to ignoring others. He wasn't willing to cut his own flesh, but he ran faster than anyone else when asked to reap the benefits. They had just gotten rid of Yang Tao, and Shui had sent people to take over the benefits and take over Yang Tao's territory. After taking control of the territory, Shui didn't send people to govern or pacify the people. He didn't open the granaries to release grain or anything like that. Instead, he gathered troops, recruited the young, and lobbied the wealthy. It was understandable if the former two were fighting to the death with Jiang Pengji to increase their own strength, but the latter's actions were thought-provoking. The astute aristocrats could see through it at a glance. Wasn't this taking advantage of the situation? And Shui had sent people to lobby for them. He'd painted a nice and fragrant cake. The wealthy would provide money and grain to help him get listed. Would they buy it or not? If they bought it, they didn't know when they could recoup their losses. And Shui only needed to move his lips, but they would have to pay with real money and grain. What if Shui reneged on his debt? If they didn't buy it, the owner of the land under their feet would change from Yang Tao to Shui. Did they have the right to say no? Even though the aristocrats had connections and status, the private troops they raised couldn't compare to those of the feudal lords. And Shui wanted to act like a hoodlum, using all sorts of ways to exploit and squeeze out their family assets and private stashes. They were forced into a passive position. Seeing through Anne's tricks, the group of hot-headed speculators finally calmed down. And Wuxi's words may sound nice, but in reality, he doesn't do what he says. Yang Zhengzi, on the other hand, and Shui was in a crisis of trust, and the empty promises he had promised were unable to attract large amounts of investment for him. The rich families that had been fooled had also learned their lesson. At this moment, Shui revealed his true colors as well. He switched from negotiating to using both the carrot and the stick to threaten them, causing them to suffer in silence. Every time this happened, they would remember how good Yang Tao was. Even though Yang Tao was from Dongqing and relied more on the team he brought out from Dongqing, Yang Zhengzi was also a man of steel. He was a man of his word, and there was nothing wrong with that. The Nanxing aristocrats who had supported Yang Tao in the beginning had also earned quite a bit of dividends. Even though Yang Tao had lost to Jiang Pengji in the end, it was still better than Shui squeezing them dry right from the start. How regretful. The leaders of a few aristocratic families gathered together for a discussion. Their words were extremely dissatisfied with Shui. In contrast to Shui, the former lord, Yang Tao, had become a cinnabar mole and the white moonlight. I originally thought that Shui's power was strong and that he had unified more than half of Nanxing. He should be able to fight Lu Shi. Now it seems that he's only strong on the outside but weak on the inside. A clan leader dressed in an indigo Confucian robe said in a low voice, Lu Shi led his troops south and acted as if he was invading Nanxing's land. We sent 12 urgent letters to Shui asking for help, but he was indifferent. Sigh, we really misjudged him. Fighting a war was an activity that burned money and manpower. In the past 2 months, Shui had vigorously recruited troops and horses, almost pulling away all the young and strong men in the vicinity. Now, there were only old, weak, and disabled soldiers left in the city. Every family could gather more than 10,000 elites, but it was not a long-term solution. Jiang Pengji was a vassal who had unified Dongqing. The 10,000 elites were not even enough to fill the gaps between her teeth. It was too late to spend money to recruit troops and horses to defend the city. The young and strong men in the vicinity were like chives. They had long been harvested by that greedy fellow, Shui, over and over again. They were all bald. Without the young and strong men as the main force, how could they defend against Jiang Pengji's wolf-like army? It would be fine if it was just Jiang Pengji, but Jiang Pengji did not hold grudges against Yang Tao and allowed him to assist in training the troops. With Yan Lin's assistance, the two of them had a tacit understanding of each other. Back then, they could lead thousands of people to establish a large foundation in Nanxing. Now, they could lead Jiang Pengji to annex this place. Jiang Pengji was not familiar with the territory of Nanxing, but Yan Lin and his old officials were very familiar with each other. In less than 3 or 4 days, the border was in a state of emergency. Jiang Pengji's navy was divided into several groups and headed south at the same time. Their momentum was unstoppable. Why are you regretting this now? We didn't gather here to reflect on Yang Tao's actions. No matter how much they regretted it, it was water that had been poured out. They should think about the current situation and how to overcome the difficulties before them. Everyone kept silent and looked at each other, staring at each other with their eyes wide open. It seemed like no one was willing to be the first to stand out. Since you all have your reservations and refuse to speak, then I'll show my incompetence and throw a brick to attract jade. It was not a good thing for the atmosphere to be stiff, so someone could not sit still. He said, in my humble opinion, there are only 3 options before us now. Which 3? Everyone hurriedly asked. The first option is to prepare rations and gather troops to fight Lu Shi to the death. Isn't this like throwing an egg against a rock? Someone sighed gloomily. There was no difference between saying it and not saying it. The second option is to treat Shui the way we treated Yang Tao. Everyone looked at each other after hearing this. This suggestion was too rash. Jiang Pengji would not be moved if they stabbed Yang Tao first and Shui the next. If Jiang Pengji encountered a strong enemy, would they defect to their new master and stab her in the back? If they defected to Jiang Pengji, they would be lucky not to die, let alone taste the sweetness of dividends. This won't do. If we do this, how will the world view us? Forgive me for being unable to agree to such an immoral act. One by one, the other clan leaders agreed with this argument. They were the role models of the aristocratic families. How could they do evil things that were fickle for their own interests? Isn't there one more option? What's the last option? The man said, the last option. Why don't we stake it all on one throw and do our best to help Shui succeed? Everyone's faces turned green in an instant. It was as if they had swallowed several mosquitoes that had flown out of the latrine. Shui's behavior disgusted them. If they were to empty their pockets to help Shui, regardless of whether Shui won or lost, they would lose anyway. Chapter 16-17. Let's discuss. If I support Shui, I'd rather give all the grain in the granary to the refugees outside the city. At least the refugees could say a word of thanks. Even if they were fed to the beasts would know how to guard their homes. What did he get for giving him An? That Shui is a scoundrel. A scoundrel, a stubborn, crafty, and evil person. From this, it could be seen that Shui had infuriated this group of people. Otherwise, they would not have given him such a low evaluation. Everyone was silent, but their expressions showed that they agreed with the old chief's evaluation. Shui was truly a good-for-nothing. For the next few days, the battle situation became more and more tense, and the aura of war once again enveloped this quiet water town that was showing signs of decline. Everyone paid close attention to where Jiang Pengji's army was fighting. They heard that the other party was unstoppable and that the navy under her command had the help of Yang Tao and the others. They made full use of the terrain to appear and disappear unpredictably and advance at high speed. The few of them had mixed feelings. What was wrong with Yang Tao? Did he still defeat the vassal? Don't you have the low-key and dispirited look of a defeated vassal? Was it normal for the front lines to be so active? Jiang Pengji did not care about him. Was she not afraid that he would use his personal charm to secretly take over the military power? They realized that Yang Tao was really a magical man, and Jiang Pengji was even more of a magical woman. Seeing that the two of them were working together without any ill feelings, someone said sarcastically. TSK, Yang Jingzhou wasn't forced to turn his power to Nanxing back then. He was obviously a spy sent by Lu Shi, wasn't he? They had every reason to believe that Yang Tao had come to Nanxing to scout for Jiang Pengji and act as the vanguard. Just look at how the two of them were cooperating so well. Where was the previous tit-for-tat attitude? Yang Tao and the others were familiar with the situation in Nanxing. This information was exactly what Jiang Pengji needed urgently. Just as everyone was hoping that Jiang Pengji's troops and horses would not be able to adapt to the difference in the weather between the north and the south, and that an epidemic would happen, they realized expressionlessly that the enemy was almost at their doorstep. This group of people felt deeply aggrieved. Most of the soldiers under Jiang Pengji's command were northerners. Even if they were trained, their swimming skills could not be compared to the soldiers of Nanxing. Dongqing's climate was dry, while Nanxing's was hot and humid with lots of rain. With such a huge difference in climate, they should not have been acclimatized. In the end, it was another slap in the face. Jiang Pengji's smooth sailing made them doubt the accuracy of the history books. The talk about acclimatization and the frequent outbreaks of diseases were all fake. Little did they know that the so-called acclimatization and diseases, other than physical differences, were more related to poor military hygiene and inadequate medical standards. As a general in the interstellar era, how could Jiang Pengji not know this? She had been in the army for so many years, and no matter how many soldiers she had never slacked on the discipline and hygiene of the barracks. Strict adherence to military discipline was the most important quality of elites, and camp hygiene was the foundation of the logistics of the three armies. After nearly 10 years of strict discipline, the soldiers in the tent had gotten used to it. As long as the conditions allowed, they would pay attention. If the conditions of war weren't good, and they couldn't even care about their lives, no one would be so picky about hygiene. No matter how they complained, it was an indisputable fact that the enemy was about to arrive. Similarly, there wasn't much time left for them to hesitate. Initially, there were a few people who wanted to throw away their pride and extend an olive branch to Jiang Pengji. Once they heard that the vanguard was Yang Tao, they immediately retreated. If they really surrendered, they would probably be killed by Yang Tao before they could even see the person in question. After the deed was done, Yang Tao would frame them, tarnish their reputation, and give all their family assets to Jiang Pengji. Jiang Pengji would turn a blind eye to Yang Tao's actions. If they died, they would have died in vain. It was quite sad to think about it this way. They couldn't surrender. That would be courting death. They also couldn't bet on Anshui. That would be like throwing a meat bun at a dog. There was no return. After thinking about it, it was better for them to move away with their families. They couldn't afford to offend them, but they could hide from them. The world was so big. They didn't believe that Jiang Pengji could lead Yang Tao to conquer every inch of land. Dreams were plentiful, but reality was harsh. When they dragged their families to pack up their belongings and secretly moved, they were intercepted by unfamiliar troops. The head of the family looked at Qian Su, who was leading them, with a pale face. It was as if his face had been painted white. Qian Su smiled and cupped his hands. He greeted them in a graceful manner. "We haven't seen each other for a few months. How have you been?" Qian Su brought more than 1,000 troops to intercept them. Most of them were cavalrymen. On the other hand, the moving troops had many carriages and horses, but most of them were old, weak, women, and children. There were only 500 guards. It was obviously unrealistic to protect the old, weak, women, and children while fending off the enemy's weapons. "How have you been?" Qian Su pulled the reins. The 1,000 troops he brought surrounded the other party. He trembled. He finally vented his anger from being tricked. Even though he relied on Jiang Pengji's power to vent his anger, it wasn't important. His old master, Yang Tao, didn't mind. He forgot himself on the battlefield and charged straight into the territory he used to govern. Qian Su didn't mind at all. "Where are you going?" Qian Su asked in a gentle voice. The head of the family watched as the guards around him were taken down before they could even fight for a few rounds. His face suddenly turned ashen. He squeezed out 2 words from the root of his teeth. "Scout. Kiss." Qian Su smiled. "It's a chaotic time. It's a long journey to visit your family. You've brought along your family and so much property. What will you do if you encounter bandits? If it's light, you'll lose money. If it's heavy, you'll lose both your family and your property. Considering our old friendship, why don't you let us escort you? The head of the family was so angry that he almost fell to the ground. Bandits? Huh, isn't Qian Su in front of me a standard bandit? How dare he call a thief to stop a thief? Qian Su suddenly stopped smiling. He raised his hand and waved his sleeves. He said coldly, "What are you all standing there for?" As soon as he finished speaking, the soldiers raised their swords. Screams and screams were heard one after another. All the guards were executed. The head of the family looked at the guards and servants in his residence being killed with a pale face. A chill ran from his back to the back of his head. "What do you want to do?" Qian Su said, "Naturally, I want to send you back to your residences. Most of the people in the wilderness are women and children. It's too dangerous without guards. You're going too far." People without guards? Weren't they all killed by Qian Su's order? He was held down by two soldiers by the shoulders like a prisoner, which made him feel ashamed and humiliated. The sword at Qian Su's waist was pressed against his neck. With just a little more force, his head would fall to the ground. He didn't dare to move. Going too far? Qian Su's thin lips curled into a cold smile. He said mockingly, "The winner is king and the loser is the bandit. If you're willing to bet, you must be willing to lose. Whatever you did back then, I'll pay you back. You relied on Shui's power. Why can't I rely on Luxi's power? A loss is a loss. Don't say such pompous words. If you have the energy to bark like a dog, why don't you think about how to deal with the aftermath of your family? You dare?" Qian Su laughed coldly in his ear. "Why not?" Chapter 16-18. No one expected Yang Tao to come so fast. No one had time to react. A few of them had already packed their belongings and ran out of the city with their families. Unfortunately, they were intercepted by Qian Su and the others. The remaining few families moved slower. When hundreds of soldiers barged into their houses, their mansions were still in a mess. Some had already packed up, while others were still piled up. The servants were busy, and the women in the backyard were unaffected by the outside world. They were as stable as Mount Tai. According to Yan Lin's order, if anyone dared to resist, they would be killed, regardless of their gender. At first, some of the servants pulled out their swords, but after a few of them fell, the rest didn't dare to make a move. The master of the house stood in the hall with a pale face. A few important women were also trapped there. The soldiers didn't touch anyone. Occasionally, some of them would sneak something into their sleeves or arms. Jiang Pengji had always been strict with her soldiers. She didn't encourage such behavior, but she didn't forbid it either. The soldiers were too uneducated. She could only ask them not to make mistakes of principle, disturb the people, and be lenient in other aspects. When Yang Tao barged into the manor while wearing a suit of armor, the face of the landowning household leader darkened. His beard trembled so hard that it looked like it was electrifying. "How dare you!" The leader of the Shi family was over 50 years old. He had many children and grandchildren. There were 25 guards in the hall. The older ones, such as the leader of the Shi family, were in their 40s. The youngest one was only 3 months old. He was still crying in his mother's arms. Children's cries were the most heart-wrenching, but also the most annoying. At that moment, the leader of the Shi family was no longer in the mood to play with his grandson. He didn't like his grandson because he looked like himself. Instead, he felt annoyed and disgusted. His grandson's biological mother, his daughter-in-law, saw the fierce and impatient look in her father-in-law's eyes. She was so scared that she lowered her head. She secretly sobbed while gently coaxing her little son, who couldn't stop crying. The hall was even more chaotic. "Everyone's here." Yang Tao put his hand on the weapon at his waist and smiled at the leader of the Shi family. "Who gave you permission to break into their house?" The old chief's gray beard trembled slightly as he scolded. Yang Tao didn't answer. Instead, Yan Lin, who was behind him, sneered. "Of course, it's allowed by strength in numbers. The old patriarch was infuriated, and his wife hurriedly supported him to steady him. How arrogant! Yan Lin said, every dog has its day. Back then, you were heartless and betrayed us. Why didn't you foresee what would happen today? Don't think that the entire world is on your side just because you have a few words to say. Old man, you reap what you sow. How could Shui convince these people to give up on Yang Tao? Apart from Lu Zhang's eloquence and ability to pinpoint their weaknesses and worries, their greed and hypocrisy were also a major reason. Investment is risky, so one must be cautious when entering the industry. There was no such thing as a sure-win investment in this world. These landowning households planned to stand firm in this chaotic world and even take advantage of this chaotic world to advance further. Naturally, they had to bear the corresponding risks. Yan Lin didn't blame them for withdrawing their investment when things went south. But it was too much to turn around and step on them. The cause sown that day will bear fruit today. You call others arrogant, but why don't you look at yourself in the mirror? Even though Yang Tao didn't take it to heart, Yan Lin couldn't let it go. These people held Yan Shuxian, Yang Rujia, and the two children hostage to threaten Yang Tao. They almost killed Yang Tao. He couldn't forget it even if he wanted to. Even the others could tell that Yan Lin didn't come with good intentions, let alone the old patriarch who was used to deceiving others. He was panting with rage, and his wrinkled cheeks were turning purple. You're just a bunch of dogs who rely on their master's power. So what if you kill us today? At the end of the day, you're still Lu Shi's lackeys. You're just stray dogs. The old patriarch knew very well that Yan Lin wouldn't kill them, but he wouldn't let them go easily either. If he robbed them of their wealth and blamed the refugees and bandits for it, they wouldn't be able to avenge themselves. Without the wealth they had accumulated over the years, how could they make a comeback in the future? There were so many main and side branches that they had become a burden. If they were robbed of all their wealth, they would only be left with a bunch of people waiting to be eaten. They wouldn't even need the outside world to kick them when they were down. Yan Lin sneered. Yang Tao said seriously, Xiaoyang, why are you wasting so much time talking to them? Yan Lin calmed down and asked, in Jing's opinion, how should we deal with these people? Yang Tao asked casually, they're just a bunch of prisoners. If we don't arrest them, are we supposed to worship them like Buddha? The old patriarch and the others were livid. Blue veins popped on their foreheads. Only Yan Lin was smiling. Zhengze is right. There's no need to waste our time talking to these people. Just arrest them. After saying that, the old patriarch saw pairs of soldiers working together to carry boxes after boxes of items out. The old patriarch's eyes were about to pop out of his head. These boxes were gold and silver, financial records, account books, land deeds, and incomplete books. There were at least 200 boxes in total. Bandits. Shameless. Don't go too far. The old patriarch's eyes rolled back and he fainted. His children and daughters-in-law were so frightened that they surrounded him. Yang Tao snorted and waved his hand. Keep an eye on these people, lest they collude with the enemy. Let's go to the next house. Jiang Pengji wanted to rob the rich, but she couldn't just do it by force. She had to find a reason. Yang Tao asked Yan Lin worriedly as he was leaving. Lu Lanting is really doing this. Is she planning to rob along the way? Yang Tao thought that Jiang Pengji was too bold. She had offended the entire Nanxing aristocratic circle. Yan Lin's eyes were emotionless. He said coldly, so what? Lu Shi was born in Dongqing, not Nanxing. Most of the aristocratic families in Nanxing were under Shui's protection. They didn't have any good intentions towards her. If Lu Shi didn't treat them as enemies, was she going to worship them as her ancestors? The winner takes all. She didn't kill them all and only took some of their belongings. Wasn't that merciful? Besides, she has been fighting for 2 years. She has enough soldiers, but she is running low on food. If she doesn't find a way to replenish her food, what will she do when she runs out of food? Turn corpses into human meat to satisfy her hunger? She has no choice. Yang Tao was shocked. Lack of food. Yan Lin said, I heard that after Lu Shi started his rebellion, he has been plowing the fields year after year. The fertility of the fields is getting worse and worse. Now he is at the end of his rope. She's been fighting for another 2 years, and that's enough food for 400,000 soldiers. That's not a small sum. Chapter 1619. Yan Lin saw it clearly. His guess was right. However, he did not know that Jiang Pengji had found a way to increase the fertility of the land 2 years ago, and that Dou Shi, who came from a farming family, was in charge of improving the fertility of the land. The increase in production last year was not high, but it stopped the downward trend. Looking at the situation, the output should recover a little this year. As long as they could continue farming, not only would the people in the rear not lack food, but the pressure on the front lines would also be greatly reduced. Even so, the financial expenditure was still in deficit. Jiang Pengji had been using the private treasury to subsidize the expenditure, which was barely enough to maintain the balance. In order to not collapse in the future, it was necessary to beat up the local tycoons and plunder their wealth. Not only that, Jiang Pengji imitated the predecessors of the previous dynasty and did something even more outrageous. She sent the gold raiding officers to plunder the funerary goods from the ancestral graves. Of course, these things were done in secret. The tomb robbers disguised themselves as ordinary tomb robbers and tried their best not to touch the funerary objects in the coffins. Jiang Pengji had a very good reputation among the common people. She pretended to be innocent in front of the common people. One moment, she said that the robbers' holes were left behind by the barbarians from the 4 tribes of Nanman. Another moment, she said that the robbers' holes were committed by roaming bandits. The Nanxing aristocrats who had their ancestral graves plundered could only vomit blood. She really dares to do it. Yang Tao was speechless. Digging up someone's ancestral grave was such a shameless thing, and the key point was that he could even clear his name. This operation was too terrifying. The people of this generation were too easy to fool. They always felt that manipulating public opinion was like playing a game. A duke who had ordered to plunder the dead and embezzle the living could actually wash himself clean like a white lotus. The world was getting more and more magical. Speaking of which, Yan Lin said, I think Wei Zixiao is scarier. Why? Yang Tao didn't understand. Wei Zixiao is the only gentleman I've ever seen who can stand shoulder to shoulder with Xiao Yang. How is he scary? Yang Tao wished he could use all the words he knew to describe Yan Lin and Wei Ci. Yan Lin sighed. He couldn't bear to tell his best friend the truth. Yang Tao did not know that Wei Ci had single-handedly manipulated the people's opinions of inverting right from wrong and secretly inciting the people to hate the rich and the aristocratic families. Because Jiang Pengji never disturbed the people when she fought a war, she basically built wherever she fought. Her reputation among the people had always been good. On the contrary, most of Nanxing's aristocratic families did not do anything, and the commoners had long been resentful of them. Part of the reason for the calamity of the southern barbarians was due to the aristocratic family's manipulation of power. On one side was Jiang Pengji, who had brought them stability and protection. On the other side was the Nanxing aristocrats who had previously oppressed and exploited them. The latter had a negative and strong image in the eyes of the people, but now they jumped out to complain that their ancestral graves had been stolen by the shameless Jiang Pengji. Who would the people believe more? He didn't need to investigate to know he would choose Jiang Pengji. Just as the navy that Wei Ci had secretly released had said, the Duke of Lanting had been fighting for more than 10 years and had experienced countless battles. For many years, she did not even disturb the common people once. She did not even touch the common people's fertile fields and family wealth. Why would she do something so immoral as digging up the ancestral graves of others? That's impossible. Even people with poor logic would be fooled by the seemingly reasonable excuse, not to mention the common people who were 99% illiterate. Anyway, you should stay away from. Yan Lin swallowed his words and corrected himself. Men and women should stay away from each other. One of them killed, while the other passed the knife to the victim and was responsible for cleaning up the crime scene and framing the victim. He couldn't afford to offend them. Not only was Jiang Pengji powerful, but she also had the upper hand in public opinion. This loss, those unlucky Nanjing aristocrats had no choice but to eat it. Yang Tao spent half a month conquering half of the province. The situation in the other provinces was also very gratifying. News of victory came one after another. Jiang Pengji ate a few more bowls of rice because of this. The reason why the war was going so smoothly was because of the enemy's passive resistance. When the people heard that Shui had plundered the young men of the two provinces at the border of Nanjing, some people were confused. Isn't Wuxia planning to give up? Tisk, if he really gave up, why would he fight the war? Wouldn't it be more straightforward to surrender with his troops? He most likely has some conspiracy and plans to wait for the enemy to exhaust himself. Some people were confused, while others saw clearly and had their own thoughts. Nanjing has been in chaos for almost 10 years. There is a shortage of young men, and the people are extremely poor. Rather than disperse the troops to defend the provinces, it's better to concentrate the troops to defend the most fertile, easily defensible, and difficult to attack areas. Our army is on an expedition, so supplies are difficult, but Shui doesn't have to worry about that. Jiang Pengji had come thousands of miles to attack Shui's doorstep, and he had to bring his own food when he went out. Shui was sitting at his doorstep defending, and when he was hungry, he went to the kitchen to take a bite of a pancake. It went without saying who had the advantage in logistics. Everyone suspected that Shui wanted to fight a war of attrition with Jiang Pengji. Whoever could not hold on first would leave. Jiang Pengji naturally knew what an ordinary person could think of. However, she felt that things were not that simple. Jiang Pengji did not know much about Shui, but she knew that he was not someone who would easily admit defeat. How could he retreat without a fight? Unless he has other plans. Jiang Pengji rubbed her hands a few times. Her slender fingertips glowed red. It was already midwinter. Nanjing's winter was colder than Dongqing's. Dongqing's coldness was physical damage. No matter how cold it was still on the skin. Nanjing's coldness was magical damage. It was wet and cold, seeping into the bones. This was Jiang Pengji's first winter in Nanjing. Even she felt a little uncomfortable, not to mention the other generals and the ordinary soldiers who had weaker physiques. The first winter snow came very suddenly. Jiang Pengji had no choice but to stop fighting. With this winter snow, Jiang Pengji also understood Shui's true intentions. I've seen shameless people, but I've never seen anyone more shameless than Shui. Shui plundered the young, strong, and rations clean. The old, the weak, the sick, and the disabled all lacked winter clothes and food. If they were left unattended, many people would die in this winter. Jiang Pengji could not help but suspect that Shui wanted to use this method to speed up the depletion of Jiang Pengji's rations. Shui could bear the infamy and disregard the lives of the people, but Jiang Pengji, who had a good reputation among the people, could not. Due to many reasons, Jiang Pengji had no choice but to temporarily stop fighting in the south. She had to wait for spring to come and fight again. Of course, due to her doubts about Shui's character, it was hard to guarantee that he would not launch a sneak attack. She still had to be cautious. Fortunately, I'm prepared. A winter without a hot pot was not perfect. A hot pot without chili was soulless. In this era, chili only grew in the wilderness. A small amount of it flowed into the central plains and was used as a spice. Yan Lin was also born in a gentry family. He had mixed incense before, so he naturally knew what was good and what was bad. He did not understand why Jiang Pengji had sent people to deliver more than 20 jars of dried chili. Yan Lin speculated, although this thing can drive away the cold, it has a strong and pungent smell. The soldiers might not be used to it. Yang Tao opened the secret report sent by Jiang Pengji. He had a strange expression on his face. Lu Lanting said, "This thing is to be boiled in water before drinking." Not only that, but she also gave each general a set of warming cauldrons. Chapter 1620. Yan Lin politely declined the offer of dried chili and chili powder soup. Although most of the ingredients were edible, the chili powder was too strong. Yan Lin, who lived a delicate life, rejected it. How dare you eat Lu Shi's food? Seeing Yang Tao's eagerness, Yan Lin felt a little tired. Why not? Are you afraid that Lu Lanting will harm me? You've used so much chili powder to send the entire army to hell just to harm me? Xiao Yang thinks too highly of me. Yang Tao looked innocent, but he knew that there were some things that did not need to be said out loud. I heard that Lanting likes to warm cauldrons too. It's probably her hobby. It's not a big deal to have a few meals. Yang Tao held a small jar of finely ground chili powder in one hand. He dipped his finger into it and licked it. An indescribably spicy taste filled his tongue, and he began to salivate. Although it was his first time tasting chili powder, it was not bad. Yang Tao dipped his finger into it again. He smacked his lips. He had fallen in love with chili powder the first time he tasted it, and the second time he tasted it, he fell in love with it. Seeing Yang Tao's unhygienic behavior, Yan Lin could not help but say, "Don't cook that jar in the pot." Yang Tao asked Yan Lin in surprise as he sipped the chili powder, savoring the spicy taste in his mouth. Why? Yan Lin glanced at his finger and frowned in disgust. It's dirty. He did not want to eat Yang Tao's saliva. The thought of it disgusted him. Not only did Yan Lin have obsessive-compulsive disorder, but he was also a clean freak. It was just that he rarely showed it during battles. Yang Tao understood. He smiled and said, "It's okay. Lu Lanting gave me enough. I'll get you a new jar." Yan Lin was speechless. He did not say that he wanted to eat it. Jianghu explained in detail how to make different kinds of spicy broth and the importance of chili powder in barbecuing. Yang Tao was right. Yang Tao, who was not a fan of warming cauldrons, suddenly fell in love with this way of eating. Nanxing was humid and cold, but after eating the spicy cauldron, he did not feel cold. Instead, he felt sweaty. In this season, the taste of spicy hot tripod was really great, especially for someone like Yang Tao who had a strong taste. Eating spicy food was like finding his true love, and he wanted to eat hot tripod every meal. In the end, his stomach couldn't take it, and he frequently went to the toilet. How old are you? You still can't control your mouth. Yan Lin was speechless when he saw the red pimples on Yang Tao's face. It looked like he had eaten too much spicy food, which had caused internal heat to build up in his body. He didn't have time to vent it. It wasn't serious, but Yang Tao's childishness still left him speechless. Yang Tao was. Yang Yan looked pale. Was. Yang Tao was Yan was. Sigh, people only live for a few decades. If they can't do whatever they want, what's the point of living? Yang Tao now ate chili peppers as a side ingredient for every meal. He couldn't live without spicy food. He always felt that the previous gap of 20 to 30 years had been filled. Cutting off the chili and continuing to eat bland dishes was simply asking for his life. Yan Lin couldn't help but sneer. He asked the kitchen to prepare some light porridge and pickled bitter gourd for Yang Tao. No matter how Yang Tao begged for mercy, Yan Lin was not moved. He had been too lenient with Yang Tao in the past. Now, it was time for him to suffer a little and wake up. I really don't know how Lu Shi discovered the use of this thing. Qian Su did not eat spicy food every day like Yang Tao, but he would eat spicy food every other day. It was addictive. It tasted good. What was more, if he ate it with some hot soup, he would feel as if he had just taken a hot bath. Qian Su felt that it was an indispensable seasoning in winter as it could be used in cold and damp places. Of course, he was most curious about how Jianghu found out about chili. Chili was mostly grown in barbarian areas. Only a small amount of chili would enter the Central Plains and be used as raw materials for cooking. Qian Su could not imagine how Jianghu had added spices to food. Yan Lin said, "Maybe she's imitating Shenong." Qian Su burst out laughing. Shenong tasted herbs to benefit the people. Why did Lu Shi taste spices? Could it be to benefit the foodies? Qian Su felt like he had discovered an incredible truth. Lu Shi, the Duke of Lanting who was rumored to have killed countless people, was actually a person who valued good food? Qian Su was amused by his own imagination. Chili was popular in the military camp that winter and attracted countless fans. It was also popular among the common people. Under normal circumstances, it would be difficult for the people to accept new things. But it was a time of war, so the spread of chili was smooth. Apart from chili, Jiang Pengji distributed some warm clothes to the people. In addition to the common wool fabrics, there were also cotton-padded clothes filled with cotton mixed with tree scraps. It was not that Jiang Pengji did not want to use cotton clothes, but the production of cotton was not high. There was a lot of wood scraps left in the papermaking industry in Chongzhou. In order to get warm clothes, she had to use this method. Even so, the warm clothes were better than the ones she had before. The clever women had started making clothes last year. It took them a whole year to get enough for the soldiers at the front line. Of course, not all warm clothes were the same. The cotton for Jiang Pengji and her group was the softest and warmest cotton. The thickness and workmanship were guaranteed. The cotton for the soldiers was of a lower thickness. They had clothes from previous years, so they did not feel cold. The cotton for the people was thinner than the soldiers, but it was still warm. It was to make more clothes for the people with the fixed amount of raw materials. With such a huge demand, they had to reduce the amount of raw materials. Apart from clothes, every city had more than 10 porridge stalls that distributed hot porridge. The porridge was not so thick that it could not be poured over, but it was enough to make one half full and not starve to death. This was the best that Jiang Pengji could take care of the people around her while ensuring the supply of food for the soldiers. Did she not have the ability to feed the people well? Of course not. She was still in contact with the old chief. She did not know where he had gone recently. It was not a problem to provide a large amount of food. Taking a step back, without the old chief, there was still the shop in the system. Without the system, the price of white rice in the shop was so low that it could be supplied to the whole army in bulk. But this was the last resort. Jiang Pengji would not touch it unless it was the last resort. Unless there was another natural disaster like the earthquake in Shangjing in Dongqing that could not be resisted by humans. Jiang Pengji did not want to give the world the image of an unprincipled Virgin Mary. Chapter 1621. Just as Jiang Pengji had guessed, Shui had deliberately recruited all the young and strong people who could be taken away. The remaining old, weak, sick, and disabled would not have enough food to get through the winter. Even though a large number of refugees had starved or frozen to death in previous years, wasn't Jiang Pengji in charge this time? Jiang Pengji was a feudal lord with an extremely good reputation among the people. If there were huge casualties among the people under her rule, it would be a huge blow to her reputation. If Shui took the opportunity to send people to incite these refugees who could not survive to attack her, she would be in grave danger. Either Jiang Pengji gave up her reputation among the people and let tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people starve or freeze to death. Otherwise, Jiang Pengji would embezzle the provisions used for the war. In this way, the morale of the army would definitely be shaken by the lack of provisions in the spring. Either way, Jiang Pengji was at a disadvantage. If that wasn't the case, why would Shui be so generous as to give away 2 prefectures? In the eyes of the outside world, Jiang Pengji had conquered nearly 2 prefectures of Nanxing in one go. Her momentum was like the sun at high noon. If it weren't for the change in the weather, she would have led her troops south and destroyed Shui's old nest. In reality, that was not the case. The profits that could be extracted from the 2 prefectures were too low. If she had not sent people to dig up graves to earn a sum of money, Jiang Pengji was afraid that even emptying her private treasury would not be able to make up for the financial deficit. Regardless of whether it was Shui or the people under Shui's tent, they all thought that Jiang Pengji would be badly battered by the refugees in the 2 prefectures who were crying piteously for food, and that she would simply provoke the people into boiling with resentment. In the end, Jiang Pengji used reality to slap their faces until they were swollen. What did you say? And Shui put down the wine cup with a clang. The Xichang Emperor concubine, who was nestled in his arms, was so frightened that she knelt down and begged for forgiveness. He didn't have any tender feelings for the fairer sex. He stared at the messenger with a stern expression. Are you sure? The messenger said, I'm sure. The news from everywhere is the same. After Lu Shi occupied the 2 prefectures, the people, and Shui abruptly raised his hand to interrupt him. His brows were tightly knitted together, leaving behind several deep wrinkles. There's no need to say anything else. Send someone to invite the military advisor over for a discussion. And Shui had wanted to watch a good show, but he hadn't expected the people he had sent to bring back news that was completely different from what he had imagined. After Jiang Pengji took over the 2 regions that were of little value, not only did the people under her rule not die on a large scale, but they also had a relatively peaceful winter. Wei Ci seized the time to dispatch the Internet Water Army. Every day, he would publish countless articles to flatter Jiang Pengji. Wei Ci's ability to control the navy was far beyond the standards of this era. The feudal lords who were once enemies with Jiang Pengji were often defeated. Even though the aristocratic families of the Nanxing and Nanxing states scolded her for digging up graves, her reputation among the common people was unexpectedly good. He who wins the hearts of the people will win the world. These words could not only be applied to the ruler of the world, but also to the feudal vassals who were striving to become the ruler of the world. It was true that Jiang Pengji had offended the aristocrats of the 2 prefectures, but she had also won over nearly 1 million people from the 2 prefectures. In comparison, there was no harm in offending a few thousand landowning households whose teeth had been plucked out. How many years had it been since the citizens of Nanxing had a war-free winter? Since the beginning of the calamity of the southern barbarians, the common people had always been in deep water and suffering. At night, they were worried that bandits would suddenly break into their homes to kill and loot. It could be seen how heavy their shadow was. She, an outsider marquis, had done what the Nanxing marquis had not done. The common people longed for peace and a stable life. Jiang Pengji had let them see hope. To further embellish Jiang Pengji's lofty and selfless image, Wei Ci had even revealed some facts, such as how rare it was for Jiang Pengji to distribute warm clothes, and how she had almost emptied her private treasury to ensure that the people of the 2 prefectures had a peaceful winter. Although she had not brought the best days to the common people, she had done her best. The common people should know how to be satisfied. After Wei Ci's manipulation, the common people of the 2 prefectures wished they could worship Jiang Pengji as their savior. Crazy. They're all crazy. What kind of magic potion did Lu Shi feed the common people? When the aristocrats found out that there was a thief's hole near the graves of their clans, they were so angry that their lungs were about to explode. However, when they heard the common people singing praises of Jiang Pengji, they almost felt like they had been born. And Shui and his group had the same thoughts as them. And Shui sent people to spread rumors that were unfavorable to Jiang Pengji. In the end, the people who spread the rumors were beaten half to death by the common people. They were simply making trouble out of nothing. Was it fake that Jiang Pengji had dug up graves? Was it fake that Jiang Pengji had slaughtered countless people all these years? She was clearly a tyrant, but she had been portrayed as a white lotus flower. Were they all blind? And Shui's first plan had failed, so he came up with another plan. Unfortunately, it was stopped by Hua Yuan. The most important thing now is to prepare for next spring. The soldiers under Lu Shi's command have sufficient protection against the cold. A surprise attack won't be very effective. And Shui sighed and said, "That's fine. I was too impatient." When faced with Jiang Pengji, and Shui was lying when he said that he did not feel pressured. Not only did he feel pressured, but he also felt a mountain of pressure. It was just that he could not tell these feelings to others. He was the Lord. If even he had the intention to fight, how could his subordinates have the confidence to win? Hua Yuan was Shui's most trusted confidant at the moment. He calmed him down with a few words. After Shui's consolation, his anxious mood was greatly improved. He said to Hua Yuan, "You haven't visited him in a long time. Do you have time to visit him in the near future? Hua Yuan smiled apologetically. I have neglected the young master. This is my oversight. And Shui did not really like that air, but he had some problems. He had no choice but to make his adopted son his heir. This was good for calming people down. However, at that moment, Hua Yuan quietly told him something that made Shui's heart tremble. He introduced Shui to a divine doctor who had a lot of experience in treating men's private matters. Shui was tempted. He secretly met with the divine doctor. The moment an expert made a move, one would know whether he was real or not. The doctor's diagnosis was exactly the same as Shui's. Unlike other doctors who said they were helpless, this doctor had a way to cure him. Of course, Shui hoped to have his own bloodline. He was so happy that he could not suppress it. His expression twisted for a moment. Are you serious? Shui tried hard to suppress his joy. He asked the doctor carefully. The white-haired doctor said, Duke Duishi, there will be an effect after a month of careful recuperation. After 3 months of recuperation, the hidden illness will be cured. Shui said, then I'll have to trouble you to prescribe medicine. The doctor said, a doctor has a benevolent heart. This is a doctor's duty. Duke Duishi, you are too serious. At the side, Hua Yuan also said, congratulations on regaining Lin, my lord. Shui nodded repeatedly. After a while, he said, take care of Mian, lest the child feels uncomfortable. He had raised that adopted son as the young master for a few years. They had some father-son relationship. This matter had to be kept from him for now. Hua Yuan said, your subject understands. Don't worry, my lord. He brought the doctor to prescribe medicine in secret. When there was no one around, the doctor's face, which had been calm before, turned a little pale. Hua Yuan laughed coldly. Do what you have to do. Don't talk too much. If you talk too much, not only will your own tongue be pulled out, your entire family will not be able to escape. Chapter 1622. There was no emotion in Hua Yuan's eyes. He was so cold that it made one's heart tremble. His aura made even the old physician, who was used to seeing life and death, tremble. He was an ordinary physician. He had spent his entire life practicing medicine and saving lives. No matter who his patients were or what status they had, he treated them all the same. Even though his medical skills were not low among his peers, the old physician felt that he was still far from being the leading doctor of his dreams. In order to live up to the promise he had made when he first entered the profession, he had never let his guard down for decades. He had never expected that the clean reputation he had maintained for most of his life would be destroyed by his own hands. This young man before him had threatened him with the lives of his entire family and even his relatives. The old physician had no choice but to comply. He had struggled at first. He and Hua Yuan had lied to Shui and misdiagnosed others. Wasn't this going against his medical ethics? However, the old physician knew the consequences of going against Hua Yuan. He could clearly see that Hua Yuan was definitely not a person who cared about human lives. Killing people was as normal as eating and drinking to him. The old physician had experienced a mental torture. In the end, he had given up on his integrity and helped Hua Yuan commit evil deeds. He only hoped that after Hua Yuan achieved his goal, the other would be merciful, or find some conscience and spare the old physician's family. Even though the old physician was old, he wasn't blind. He knew one thing: the more one knew, the earlier one would die. If the old physician knew Hua Yuan's secret, would the latter let him live? Clearly, this was impossible. The old physician knew that he would die after this. Do you have a secret formula for aiding pregnancy? Hua Yuan leaned against the medicine cabinet and watched the old physician write down the formula. He suddenly asked, scaring the old physician so much that his hands trembled. Aiding pregnancy, this. The old physician said awkwardly. Duke Duishi's body looks no different from an ordinary man's, and he can even sleep with women. However, his seed is dead. No matter how fertile the soil is, a dead seed can't germinate. Even though the old physician had many accomplishments in this field and had cured many men with fertility problems in the past, he really could not do anything about Shui's situation. Even if he had a secret formula for aiding pregnancy, Shui could not impregnate a woman. This would be making things difficult for the old man. Huayuan pinched a piece of dry grass to his lips and smiled indifferently. I know that Duke Duoshi's body is no different from a natural eunuch. I don't need you to remind me. A man who couldn't get a woman pregnant, even if he became a feudal lord, would still be an eunuch. Huayuan had always been certain that he was Lu Shi. How could he let a crippled man order him around? He also wanted this world. Thus, Shui was an obstacle in Huayuan's eyes, a stumbling block that he had to get rid of. The old doctor asked awkwardly, if that's the case, why do you need to use a secret formula to aid in pregnancy? Half of Huayuan's body was leaning against the medicine cabinet. His slightly loose Confucian robe made him look extremely flirtatious. There was a hint of a smile in his eyes and he looked a little cynical. However, behind this flirtatious was a poison that could seal one's throat at the sight of blood. The old physician secretly sighed and thought that it was a pity. Didn't you diagnose Duke Duoshi and say that he has a small chance of impregnating a woman after a month of recuperation? Huayuan sneered and countered with a question. On the contrary, the old physician was rendered speechless. What a lot of information. Shui couldn't possibly impregnate a woman. If Huayuan's secret formula to aid in pregnancy made Shui's woman pregnant. From this, it could be deduced that the child in her belly would definitely belong to old Wang next door. Shui was going to be cuckolded. The old physician secretly clicked his tongue. As a physician, he was used to seeing birth, aging, sickness, death, and disputes. Some of the fights and tricks of the rich were even more complicated and bizarre than what was described in the novels of the common folk. Art came from life and was above life. That was roughly what it meant. Was Huayuan trying to make Shui a cuckold and have his own bloodline replace Shui's position as the heir? For a moment, all kinds of melodramatic plots came one after another. The old physician could only sigh inwardly. The rich and powerful really knew how to play. How could an ordinary person think of such a dirty trick? Not only did he want to make someone die without an heir, he also wanted to eat him until he died with regrets. Just tell me directly. Yes or no? Huayuan sneered. The faster and stronger the effects, the better. The old physician said anxiously, bearing children is a natural heavenly Tao. It has a lot to do with the physical condition of both the man and the woman. It's like the soil and spring plowing and a seed full of vitality. Only when the two meet will they bear a rich fruit. If the seed is weak and the soil is fertile, the fetus will most likely die in the womb. If the seed is strong and the soil is barren, even if the child can be born successfully, the child will be born with a congenital deficiency. If someone interferes with natural reproduction, even if the child is successful, the child that is born will most likely be. He rambled on for a while, but Huayuan only responded with 9 words. Just tell me directly. Yes or no? Yes, the old physician said in a low voice. But that prescription is too strong. If the woman takes it, it will definitely harm her body. That's good. Remember to make a copy for me. Huayuan took the prescription from the old physician's hands and had him make a few more doses of medicine. Because Huayuan had given Shui hope of regaining his bloodline, the latter valued the former even more. It wasn't that he didn't suspect it, but the information that came back from his private investigations said that the old physician had great achievements in the field of male reproductive diseases. His medical skills were far superior to others. Shui took the medicine prescribed by the old physician without worry. After a period of time, he felt even more energetic. Huayuan also gave him a secret prescription to help women conceive. This secret prescription was harmless to the fetus, but it would drain the mother's essence in exchange for the most suitable environment for Lin Er's birth. Shui was overjoyed, but he was not too satisfied with Huayuan's plan to give these medicines to the Xichang imperial concubine. How can a mere imperial concubine of a fallen nation be qualified to bear my child? And Shui placed great importance on bloodline. The Xichang imperial concubine was beautiful and literate. She had good qualities, but her background was not good. Even if Shui was obsessed with his child, he did not want his future child to have such a lowly mother. She's just using her to test the doctor's prescription. If the effects of the prescription are real, it's not too late for the Lord to choose a mistress with a noble bloodline for the young master. The son is valued by his mother. The position of the young master will definitely belong to the future young master. Every word he said and every action he did made Shui feel extremely comfortable. Even though Hua Yuan was the West master who had adopted his son, Hua Yuan still valued him, the Lord, and the future young master. This was good. Chapter 1623. And Shui took the medicine according to the doctor's instructions. He even asked Hua Yuan to give the medicine to the Xichang emperor's concubine, who drank it 3 times a day. The Xichang emperor's concubine didn't know that Shui was infertile, nor did she know what kind of ferocious effects the medicine she drank had. She was living under someone else's roof and had to obey. Recently, however, Shui had been more excited than usual when he slept with her. She couldn't take it. She had a tiny bit of hope in her heart. If she could get a boy, when Shui had a son, wouldn't the heir be her son? Because of these thoughts, the Xichang emperor's concubine had become more tender and attentive to Shui. Shui didn't mind giving her more love. No one knew that all of this was planned by Hua Yuan. He was playing a very big game of chess, a game that no one could figure out even if they racked their brains. No one knew that suggesting Shui to withdraw his troops and give up 2 prefectures to Jianghu was also part of his plan. Not only was it to deplete Jianghu's rations, but it also had a deeper meaning, to stall for time and buy more time for his plan. What was Hua Yuan's plan? Was he just trying to make his lord a cuckold? No, he wasn't that vulgar. Other than himself, only 2 people could see through Hua Yuan's plan. One was the old doctor whose life was in Hua Yuan's hands. The old doctor knew that Hua Yuan was going to make Shui a cuckold. The other was Hua Yuan's favorite in the eyes of outsiders, the Xichang prince. Not only did the Xichang prince know that Hua Yuan was going to make Shui a cuckold, but he also knew exactly how. Speaking of which, the Xichang prince still had some pride in his bones. Because of this pride, he had underestimated the chaotic world outside of Xichang. He had run into a wall with Jianghu. Unwilling to give up, he had come to Shui to try his luck. In the end, he had lost himself and his sister. When he found out that Shui's trusted aide, Hua Yuan, wanted to be a boy toy, he had almost fainted from anger. At this time, men were popular. It was very common for the sons of rich families to keep a few prostitutes to relieve their boredom. Many of the rich Langjuan study attendants also played the role of servant girls. On one hand, she accompanied her Langjun to study and practice calligraphy, taking care of his daily life, and on the other hand, she warmed his bed and vented her lust. Of course, not every study boy was like this, but this phenomenon was very common in the circle of aristocratic families. He had said a lot of nonsense just to show that masculinity was really common in this era. Other than the fact that no man would marry another man openly, it was almost the same as an ordinary married couple. Many legal wives and concubines would only be able to carry on the family line when faced with such a shameless man. In the words of the viewers in the live stream room, this was probably the rumored true love. The Prince of Xichang was in despair. He thought that he was going to be subservient as well. He learned from the lowliest male pet and fawned on someone of the same sex. In the end, surprisingly, Hua Yuan did not touch him. Instead, he would often reveal a look of astonishment and disgust. As time passed, the Xichang prince forgot about the humiliation of being a male pet. He even felt a little angry. Was he that unattractive? Hua Yuan said harshly, "You're just a mortal, that's all. Have sex with you? I'm afraid of getting dirty." The Prince of Xichang was so angry that he almost fainted. Before the imperial family fell, he was also famous in the capital. How could he be considered an ordinary person? How much better was Hua Yuan? He actually thought that he was dirty. Hua Yuan could tell what was going on in his mind. He sneered and said, the combination of yin and yang is the right way of human relations. You don't want to walk the water path, but walk the dry path that is used for the cycle of 5 grains. Isn't that dirty? Hua Yuan, who firmly believed that he was Lu Shi, liked the opposite sex even though he was more manly than a woman. He had no choice. This body belonged to a man. She could only pinch her nose and accept it. Her sexual orientation also changed. He could not accept the dirty path that was used to get rid of filth. The prince of Xichang was not afraid of rectal prolapse, but he was afraid of getting sick. After learning of Hua Yuan's thoughts, the prince of Xichang was so angry that he fainted again. He was a prince. How could he want to be a male pet? Hua Yuan, this lowly commoner, really thought that he was someone important. Soon, he knew that instead of feigning civility with such a person, he would rather be a male pet that was subservient. One day, Hua Yuan made a request to the prince of Xichang that made him shudder. The prince of Xichang was stunned for a long time. What did you say? The prince of Xichang was so scared that his face turned pale. Disgust and disgust were written between his brows. He looked at Hua Yuan not as if he was looking at a person, but as if he was looking at a ghost. My sister and I are siblings from the same mother, but you want me to. She is your lord's concubine. You instigate another man to have an improper relationship with her. It looks like you have a lot of complaints about your lord. He did not hear wrong. Hua Yuan, this crazy man, actually wanted him to do something that would cause disharmony with his own sister. Not only that, he also wanted her to get pregnant. You're crazy. However, Hua Yuan looked at him with a gaze that seemed to be able to see through his heart. What are you laughing at? It's quite interesting to hear this from you, Hua Yuan said disdainfully. Does the so-called royal family also care about human relations? The people of this era were obsessed with bloodlines. The gentry clans were so. The royal family, which was regarded as nouveau riche by the gentry clans, were even more obsessed than the gentry clans. In order to ensure the purity of the bloodline, it was very common for close relatives to marry. It was even more common for the royal family to have sexual relations in private. The Xichang royal family, which was not particular about their origins, was so resistant to having sexual relations between siblings. It was an eye-opener for Hua Yuan. Hearing the mockery in Hua Yuan's words, the Xichang prince was both angry and angry. Hua Yuan laughed. If I were you, I probably wouldn't make such a foolish choice. You're saying I'm stupid? Compared to Hua Yuan, who had schemed against An Shui at some point, the Xichang prince was ashamed of his inferiority, but he was not stupid. Is it not stupid? This is a ready-made and only chance for you to escape from the situation of being looked down upon by others. If I were you, I would firmly grasp this opportunity and escape from the current predicament before making other plans. If the child in the Empress concubine's belly is yours, no one but you, the Empress concubine, and me will know. Everyone will only think that the child is Duke Duishi's. In this situation, the only obstacle that can stop you is Duke Duishi's adopted son. Once the adopted son dies, the future position of young master can only be inherited by a child with pure Xichang blood. Hua Yuan's words both tempted and frightened the Xichang prince. What kind of heart did this person in front of him have? The son is weak, but the mother is strong. If something happens to Duke Duishi, won't you be the one to reap the benefits? The Xichang prince endured his chattering teeth and said, the one to reap the benefits is clearly you. Chapter 1624. The Xichang prince asked carefully. What if I refuse? Hua Yuan said coldly. Do you think you're the only one in the world with that bit of flesh between your legs? There are plenty of men who can impregnate women. I chose you because your identity can make Duke Duishi lower his guard. If you spend a long time alone with the Empress concubine, he won't be suspicious. To make An Shui a cuckold, there had to be time and space for the adulterer to fully display his skills. When he had asked An Shui for the prince to be his male pet, it was only because the prince's identity was useful and Shui would not be suspicious. After hearing this, the Xichang prince's fingertips trembled uncontrollably. If there was medicine for regret in the world, he would rather stay in Xichang than come here. I didn't expect that you had such a plan. Do you really think you can control everything? Hua Yuan's words were the last straw that broke the camel's back. I don't keep useless people who know secrets. If I'm in a bad mood, I'll cut off your tongue, chop off your hands, and send you to a brothel to live for a few days. If I'm in a good mood, I might give you a quick death, Hua Yuan said with a smile. Of course, I can't control everything, but I can control your life and death. You should also think carefully about what is more important. If you die, there's no hope. If you can endure humiliation and live, you might have a chance at survival. You're a smart man, you should know what to choose. Hua Yuan saw through the Xichang prince. The prince said he would resist, but his heart and eyes were filled with ambition and schemes. He would do anything to achieve his goals. Hua Yuan hated hypocrites who said one thing but meant another. They were clearly filthy, but they clung to their last shred of dignity and refused to let go. Hypocrite. What Hua Yuan wanted to do was to peel off this disgusting fake skin and expose the ugly face behind it to the light of day. Are you going to do it or not? Hua Yuan's voice was like a death warrant from hell. The prince was so frightened that he sweated profusely. The sticky sweat quickly soaked his inner clothes. He growled in a voice close to pain and despair. I'll do it. I'll do it, all right? He didn't even use the noble title of Gu. He was too scared to use it. Looking at the prince who looked like he would rather die, Hua Yuan sneered coldly in disdain, mocking the other party's pretense. As long as he appeared to be in enough pain and struggle, he would be able to cover up his shameful thoughts and ambitions and blame everything on Hua Yuan's coercion. Hypocrisy was nauseating. It was better to be honest. Hua Yuan's plan proceeded in an orderly manner. He wanted to transplant a vast grassland into Shui's head and let him herd sheep and horses as he pleased. He also needed the other person involved in the incident to agree. Compared to the Xichang prince's hypocrisy and refusal, the Xichang Empress concubine was more straightforward. This made Hua Yuan look at her differently. Of course, this was also related to Hua Yuan revealing to her that Shui was infertile. Her inability to bear children meant that she would always be a tool to warm men's bed. Her usefulness was even shorter than her youth. Once her beauty faded, Shui would no longer care about her, and others would forget about her. The Empress concubine was just a concubine to warm men's bed, a weak woman who could not control her own fate. Not every woman in the world could transform into a superior person like Lu Shi, let alone become a leader of the world like her. Most women could only be like rootless duckweed, suffering the torment and destruction of a chaotic world. The more beautiful a woman was, the more dangerous her situation was. Men proved their strength by conquering them. Women relied on jealousy and fighting for men's love as their capital. Shui could not impregnate anyone. This was equivalent to cutting off the Empress concubine's future and hope. She agreed to Hua Yuan's plan. She could only cry silently in the dead of night. She did not understand why some women could live lives that made all women in the world envious and jealous, like Jianghu, while others had their fates manipulated by others. She was the high and mighty Empress concubine of Xichang. How had she fallen to such a state? Hatred and jealousy twisted her heart so tightly that she almost could not breathe. How unfair fate was. She thought she was talented and learned, and her ambition was no less than a man's. If she had Jianghu's starting point and had so many loyal followers, she would not have done any worse than her. It was a pity that these assumptions would never have the chance to come true. Jianghu did not know this. Even if she knew, she would not care. Those who did not attract jealousy were mediocre. She was so outstanding and powerful. If she did not attract jealousy, did it not mean that she was still mediocre? Compared to other things, she preferred to go hunting, barbecuing, winter swimming, and catching fish in the winter. None of these interests seemed to have anything to do with official work. Won't your subordinates rebel when you do this? Yang Tao had a thick fox fur cloak draped over his shoulders. His feet were propped up on the side of the boat. Half of his feet were submerged in the cold river water. If one looked closely, they would see that Yang Tao's upper body was naked. He only wore loose pants that covered his body. His long hair was wet. He had just climbed out of the river. His winter swimming partner was still underwater. Who was Yang Tao's winter swimming partner? No one would believe it, but it was his former nemesis and current superior, Jiang Pengji. You'll get used to this kind of thing. Jiang Pengji dove into the water. She swam close to the surface of the water for 2 to 3 feet. She was like a female demon born in the river. How can I get used to it? Yang Tao almost choked from laughing. Different people have different fates. If it was Xiaoyang, he would have torn me apart. They also want to tear me apart, but they can't beat them. Jiang Pengji emerged from the water and smiled. They'll be thankful that I don't cause trouble for them. Zixiao and the others will help me deal with the unimportant documents and pick out the ones that I have to read personally. Master Lu's words seemed to be a little twisted. Yang Tao smiled and reached out to her. He used a little strength to pull her up. Jiang Pengji picked up the cloak and wrapped it around her body. She raised her hand and tucked her long hair behind her ears. The two of them brought their guards to swim in the river. Yang Tao was a good swimmer. He did not expect Jiang Pengji, who grew up in the north, to be so good. He was tired from swimming and climbed onto the boat to rest. Jiang Pengji was still jumping around in the water. He wondered if she could swim all the way from downstream to upstream with her physical strength. This isn't twisted logic. This is the truth. The salted fishes were excited to see their former rivals get along peacefully. But what was more exciting was Yang Tao's figure. Nide Yida, even though I used to be a die-hard fan of Beauty Ci, I want to climb the wall after seeing Yang Tao's angelic figure. Qingfeng Banshui, you don't show off when you're wearing clothes. When you take them off, your hormones are about to overflow. Chapter 1625. Jiang Pengji's streaming room was a mix of good and bad people, gays, and sluts emerged one after another. When they found out that the content of the streaming was no longer about boring government affairs, but about hormones, they couldn't stand it anymore. A group of losers clamored to F***ck Yang Tao, but the most improper ones were the gays and sluts, who stared at the bulge under Yang Tao's tight abdominal muscles and blushed. In contrast, Jiang Pengji didn't get much attention. They saw that face every day, and he wouldn't show his abdominal muscles to them. Yang Tao, the little angel, was a real warrior. He was super generous, and people blushed. Not only were the gays and sluts clamoring to push Yang Tao down, but a group of weak salted fish also followed the crowd and shouted slogans. Aod Lu Ming, if I'm the next emperor of fortune, I'll tear off Yang Tao's underpants. Xinshi Si Mi Cha, after watching the analysis of the gods in the streaming room, I feel a deep sense of inferiority. Didn't they say that men in ancient times didn't eat well? Their food was not nutritious, so they weren't tall, had bad looks, and were out of shape. But Yang Tao was such a man. Tai Di Qing Jing, if I could transmigrate, I'd like to be in Yang Tao's underpants and flirt with him every day. Jiang Pengji looked at the group of people who did not have the slightest AC and shook her head secretly. Yang Tao could lift them up with one hand, spin them around twice, and then throw them out. Who gave them the confidence to push him down and say they were going to F***ck him? Jiang Pengji's control of her expression was as pure as fire. Even though she complained in her heart, Yang Tao didn't notice anything. He took out 2 jars of liquor from the cabin and gave one to each of them. I never thought I'd be on the same boat as Master Lu and drink with him. Is it hard to imagine? Jiang Pengji said, I think it's within expectations. It's nothing new. Yang Tao carefully pondered over her words and heard the arrogance and confidence in them. When he said he never thought about it, it meant that he never thought he would lose to Jiang Pengji, and it also meant that he would be put in an important position after losing to Jiang Pengji. Jiang Pengji's answer was straightforward. She firmly believed that she would win against Yang Tao. Yang Tao's failure was within her expectations. Sigh, he was such an annoying person, but he wasn't beaten to death with a sack. Yang Tao had a good temper, but he still wanted to beat Jiang Pengji up. It could be seen how much people loved and hated her. Did Lord Lu have such a temper when he was young? Jiang Pengji finished half a jar of liquor in one breath. She propped her upper body up with her hands behind her back. Her feet were submerged in the river. Her clothes were half wet and half dry and stuck to her skin, vaguely outlining her wonderful figure. However, most of her body was covered by the cloak. Yang Tao didn't pay much attention to women other than his wife, and the guards didn't dare look straight at her. Salted Fish was only focused on licking Yang Tao's abs, so no one paid her any attention. What do you think? Yang Tao smiled. If Lord Lu had such a temper when he was young, he probably wouldn't have lived to this day. This kind of temperament was too infuriating. Jiang Pengji smiled, revealing her white teeth. Her smile seemed to be more radiant than the scorching sun above her head. How could that be? When I was young, my personality was much worse than it is now. When I grow up, I will also become more mature. She wasn't lying. She did have a bad temper when she was young. In the words of some of her old comrades, every time she looked at someone, her gaze was as if they owed her $5 million. She was silent and sinister. It was just that the image of a quiet iceberg was fine, but once she opened her mouth, she was a chatterbox. She talked until people's hearts were made of glass. Yang Tao smiled awkwardly. Now she was considered mature and steady. How mischievous was Jiang Pengji when she was young. The two of them drank more than 10 jars of liquor. Yang Tao was drunk on the third jar. Although his alcohol tolerance was good, it was based on sake. The after effects of the liquor were not something that could be compared to the sake that had been blended with water. Although hard liquor was good, one should not drink it too much. Jiang Pengji drank the rest of the liquor alone and casually threw the jar into the river. After enjoying the breeze of the river for a long time, she said to the guards, "Let's go back. Remember to boil some soup to sober him up so that he won't catch a cold." When the group of people reached the shore, Jiang Pengji's clothes were almost dry. She raised her hand and hung the god-slaying sword on her waist, returning to her normal attire. She leaped onto the horse's back and was about to give the order to return when her brows suddenly jumped. Under the sunlight, her brown eyes flashed with a hint of danger. "Wait," the guard said, "do you have any instructions, my lord?" Jiang Pengji said, "You bring Yang Tao back by water." "I want to walk alone." The guards looked at each other and said hesitantly, "The military counselors have repeatedly reminded us not to let the Lord be alone." Jiang Pengji smiled and tightened the reins. The corners of her lips curled indifferently. "Am I the Lord, or are they the Lord?" Her voice was neither light nor heavy, but it revealed a bit of chilling sternness. The guards knelt on one knee and did not dare to raise their heads. When they came back to their senses, they were shocked to find that the clothes on their backs were drenched in sweat. "I just want to be alone and hunt some prey to go back. I will catch up with you soon. Just report to the military counselors." The guards did not dare to hesitate and could only follow Jiang Pengji's orders. They did not have the guts to ask Jiang Pengji why she sent them away to hunt alone, but the salted fish were not afraid. Jiang Pengji said, "There is an ambush ahead. If they follow me, they will only drag me down. Other than dying, they will not contribute anything else." She did not hide her disdain. The salted fish were speechless. There was an ambush nearby? To be precise, there was an ambush in the forest ahead. Everyone knew that Jiang Pengji was a maverick lord. She loved hunting and drinking. Every time she was free, she would bring people to hunt. It was common for her to hunt alone. She dared to do so because she was skilled and daring. There were people in this world who could assassinate her, but those people were in another world. Based on the combat power of this world alone, she had never been afraid. But others did not think so, especially the enemy. "Gui kai guo fengxiu, I suddenly have an idea." If someone prophesied that she is light and unprepared, although he has millions of men, he will be walking alone in the Central Plains. Like an assassin lying in ambush, he will be alone. In my opinion, he will die in the hands of an ordinary man. He will probably be slapped in the face. Tudu Feccio, how is it, probably? He will definitely be slapped in the face. He will be so swollen that even his own mother can't recognize him. How could an assassin be enough for Jiang Pengji's combat power? If he did not bring a mighty army of more than 10,000, how could he touch the hem of her clothes? The salted fish closed their eyes and mocked Jiang Pengji. She wore a red robe and tied her hair into a high ponytail. She held a bow in her left hand and a god-slaying sword hung on her waist. She went into the depths of the dense forest alone. When she easily hunted down 2 deer, she heard the faint sound of arrows piercing through the air. These hidden arrows were all smeared with poison. Every one of them was aimed at her vital parts. The assassin saw that she did not respond and was secretly delighted. But the corner of his mouth had just curled up halfway when he froze. Jiang Pengji, who should have been shot and fallen, did not fall. He took a closer look and saw that the other party was holding a familiar arrow in her right hand. Chapter 1626. Qing Feng Wenpu, there's really an assassination. Are they lining up to be killed? Hua Hua, don't be strong, the world is so beautiful. Isn't it good to be alive? Why did you come here to court death? Tang Song Ci, I can feel the host's murderous intent through the screen. Other people would panic when they encounter an assassination, but she is different. She is eager to try. Sigh, even though I'm super scared, I won't leave just because of the host's looks and skills. Fairy Queen's Crimson, I'm waiting for the streamer to go on a killing spree and smash the heads of these killers. They were even more excited than Jiang Pengji. They couldn't wait to see her deal with the assassins. Jiang Pengji did not disappoint them. She crushed the arrow in her hand with a little force. Her eyes were filled with killing intent. The assassins hiding in the forest exchanged glances, and in the next second, they heard the sound of weapons being unsheathed. Kill. No matter how the outside world described Jiang Pengji's bravery, those who had not seen it with their own eyes would never believe it, especially when Jiang Pengji's figure was so deceiving. Who could have imagined that such a tall but not burly female body would have such powerful combat strength? A battle on the battlefield was different from a small-scale confrontation. The former emphasized the aesthetics of violence and did not have any techniques to speak of, while the latter relied more on techniques and cooperation. Jiang Pengji was alone and had no guards by her side, but the killers were specially trained men of sacrifice. It was still unknown who would emerge victorious. Jiang Pengji looked coldly at the enemies rushing out of the dense forest and sneered disdainfully. With a swoosh, she unsheathed the god-slaying saber. Facing the killers that were coming at her from all directions, she did not retreat. Instead, she advanced. She even felt a little pleased. Her reaction made the killer dumbfounded. Was the Duke of Lanting not joking? While he was still in a daze, the blade was already in front of him. Her knife was extremely fast. Before the killer who bore the brunt of the attack could feel any pain, his neck was already kissed by the blade. Just a second ago, the assassin was still thinking about how to kill the enemy, but in the next second, he felt a chill in his throat. Someone's blood was spurting out, dyeing everything in sight red. The world spun around him, and his body fell to the ground with a dull thud. A question popped up in the killer's mind. Why did the surrounding temperature drop so much? Why did the sky suddenly darken? Why does my neck hurt so much? He tried to open his mouth to say something, but he couldn't even sigh. Of course, Jiang Pengji did not care what the assassin was thinking before he died. She only knew that the god-slaying sword was trembling with excitement. This saber had been wronged following him. It wasn't easy for him to get a taste of meat, so he naturally had to kill to his heart's content. Of course, she knew that capturing the killers alive was better than killing them. If there was no one to command them, the killers wouldn't have ambushed Jiang Pengji for no reason. However, there was no reason to reject the heads that came to her. It was the same to leave one or two of them alive. There were a total of 100 assassins in this group, and every one of them was a meticulously trained death warrior. It was impossible to raise them unless one was from a noble family. Nurturing a qualified killer not only required a large amount of resources, but also a considerable amount of manpower and energy. Ordinary rich families could not afford to raise high-quality death warriors. Jianghu roughly knew their origins as soon as they fought. They were most likely related to the Nanxing aristocrats. Jianghu was mentally prepared that they would send someone to assassinate her. The ancient people of this era could not even accept cremation. They firmly believed that cremation meant dying without a complete corpse, being smashed to pieces, and desecrating the dead. The higher the family, the more they were particular about it. They could not even accept cremation, not to mention Jianghu digging up their ancestors' graves and plundering the deceased's gold, silver, and funerary objects. Even if she had 1,000 or 10,000 reasons, Jianghu had still offended them. They did not make a move earlier because they were not confident that Jianghu would be heavily guarded. What about now? She had courted death by bringing a few guards out for a winter hunt. Unfortunately, Yang Tao was with her. If they could assassinate Jianghu and frame Yang Tao for the crime, they would be able to wash their hands clean and watch Jianghu's power fall apart with a smile. These ideas were not bad, but they had to be based on the premise that Jianghu was really assassinated. As long as Jianghu did not die, these wishful thinking could only be a calculation and not a reality. If there were bystanders watching from the dense forest, they would see a red figure shuttling and dodging among the killers at a speed that ordinary people could not achieve. Every time the blade struck, a bloody arc would be drawn and a fresh life would be taken away. No matter how the killers shot arrows in the dark, besieged, or plotted against her, Jianghu was unscathed. She was even more slippery than a loach. From the dense forest came the jarring sound of swords and knives clashing. At the same time, a group of guards followed Jianghu's orders and sent Yang Tao back via the waterway. Dusk fell. The temperature of the water was colder than on land. Yang Tao suddenly shivered and woke up in a daze. "What time is it now?" Yang Tao asked vaguely. The guard reported respectfully. Yang Tao nodded in a daze. He sat on the deck for a while before regaining some of his senses. "Where is Master Lu?" He remembered that he had drunk a lot of wine. His head was still hurting. Before he passed out, he remembered that Master Lu drank more than him. The guard hesitated and said, "The Lord went hunting. She specially ordered us to escort you back." Yang Tao subconsciously said, "Ah." He did not suspect anything, but he quickly figured out that something was wrong. The number of guards that Jianghu brought out was not reduced. The number of guards that she brought out was not reduced either. These guards were all here. Was there anyone else around Jianghu? Yang Tao did not expect Jianghu to be so bold as to jump around alone. He did not think of this for a moment. Did Master Lu say when she will return? The guard said, "I don't know." Yang Tao asked, "She didn't say?" "It's getting dark. It's not safe outside. If they did not go back soon, someone might cause trouble." Even though she was a feudal lord, Jianghu seemed to have access restrictions. If she spent the night outside without informing her, wouldn't the civil and military officials in her camp go crazy? The guard looked troubled. He said hesitantly, "The Lord did not bring anyone with her." She did not say when she will return. Yang Tao did not react for a moment. It took him a while to digest the guard's words. "Did not bring anyone? What do you mean by did not bring anyone?" Yang Tao's voice rose an octave. The guard lowered his head even more. "The Lord does not like to have people following her. This time, do you know how many people in this world want her life? Even if she wants your lives, you can't leave your posts without permission." Yang Tao was completely shocked. At the same time, he sobered up. His tone was stern, which was rare. "Order Master Lu to turn around immediately." Chapter 1627. Although Yang Tao's order was for Jiang Pengji's own good, it went against Jiang Pengji's previous orders, so the guards did not dare to act. What are you standing there for? Yang Tao could not understand the guards' actions. If something really happened to someone, it would be fine if they took the blame, but they just had to drag him down with them. Yang Tao did not want to lose his life because of this. It would be too unjust to die, the guard said awkwardly. We have no choice but to obey the Lord's orders. If the Lord pursues this matter, Yang Tao asked in return, if something really happens to Lord Lu, who among you can shoulder the responsibility? Seeing that the guards did not give a definite answer, Yang Tao snatched the oar from the boatman's hands. You can't disobey Lord Lu's orders, and I won't force you. I'll go on my own. You can return on your own. The guards looked at each other in dismay. For a moment, they were in a dilemma. After all, the Lord's orders were for them to bring Yang Tao back via the waterway. If Yang Tao refused to cooperate, no one would be able to back down. After hesitating for a while, the guards still plucked up their courage and obeyed Yang Tao's orders. They turned around to look for Jiang Pengji. Firstly, if they were reprimanded by the Lord, at least Yang Tao would take the blame. Even if she got angry, they would not be directed at them. Secondly, as Yang Tao said, if something happened to the Lord while she was alone, they would not be able to absolve themselves of the blame. Yang Tao was in a hurry to rush back to look for Jiang Pengji, but he did not forget about other things. Send someone to pass the news back first. They had been out for so long, but they had not sent back any news. He did not know how anxious Wei Ci and the others were. Yes. Because Yang Tao had ordered them to turn around, the boatman also tried his best to row the oar. The boat moved very fast. The oncoming wind from the river slapped his face. For a moment, he sobered up from his drunkenness. He only felt perturbed and worried. Night fell, and the last ray of the afterglow fell into the horizon. Yang Tao could only ask the guards to light a torch. They followed the traces left by Jiang Pengji and found the dense forest. Wait, what is this smell? Yang Tao's nose was more sensitive. Before the group entered the dense forest, they could already smell the familiar smell of blood. He couldn't believe it and tried to sniff. The closer he got, the stronger the smell of blood became. Under the light of the torch, the guard also found that there were many traces of human activity in the forest, such as messy footsteps and bushes and weeds that were crushed by heavy objects. Yang Tao looked at the depth of the footsteps and the degree of dryness of the soil. He was sure that these footsteps were left here recently. There were many people. The more he looked, the more frightened he became. Yang Tao couldn't tell what his current state of mind was, because his mind had gone blank. Search. Search for all of them. If he's alive, I want to see him. If he's dead, I want to see his corpse. Yang Tao was suppressing his emotions that were about to go out of control, but the hoarseness in his voice exposed his inner thoughts. Not long after, the guard came back to report that a corpse had been eaten by wild beasts in the forest. Yang Tao hurried over and found a few corpses on the ground that had been dragged and eaten by wild beasts. Heads, torsos, limbs. Every part of the body with more muscle and fat had been eaten by the hungry beasts. The white bones under the skin and flesh were exposed. It made one's scalp go numb. The clothes of the deceased were also eaten by wild beasts, but from the remains of the skeleton and clothes, it could be determined that it was a man. It's not my lord. As soon as the guard finished speaking, Yang Tao replied. I'm not blind. I can tell if it's a man or a woman. Who are these people? Could they be men of sacrifice? He guessed correctly. The guard said solemnly, according to the traces left on these corpses, they are indeed well-trained men of sacrifice. These corpses haven't started to stink. The corpses are slightly hardened, and the blood is fresh. I estimate that they died less than half an hour ago. Less than half an hour ago? Didn't that mean that they died not long ago? Yang Tao's face was darker than the night. A group of men of sacrifice who had just died appeared here, and it happened to be a sensitive time when Jiang Pengji was alone. How could he not be worried? Whether it was Yang Tao or the guards, they all knew that Jiang Pengji had most likely been assassinated. However, there were no traces of her yet. They couldn't determine whether she was unscathed, injured and hidden, or, unfortunately, dead. He didn't dare to delay. Except for 2 guards, the others were sent to look for Jiang Pengji. The guards followed the traces of the wild beasts dragging the corpses and found the place where the scuffle had taken place. There were more corpses here. When the guards arrived, there were pairs of glowing eyes in the darkness. Everyone saw the scene clearly with the help of the torch and suddenly gasped. This was a group of wild wolves that hadn't eaten their fill since the beginning of winter. They were probably attracted by the smell of blood from the corpses and ate their fill from the corpses. When the crowd approached, those with sharp ears could even hear the stirring sound of the wild wolves' sharp teeth gnawing on human flesh and bones. Probably because they had eaten their fill, the leader of the wolf pack didn't want to fight with the guards. The 2 sides were in a stalemate for a while. Then, with a howl, the wolf pack left. Looking at the pairs of glowing eyes disappearing into the darkness, 2 of the guards came back to their senses and were shocked to find that they were covered in sweat. When the cold wind blew, their sweaty skin turned cold. It was so cold that they couldn't help but shiver. Yang Tao rushed over when he heard the news. Looking at the messy scene, his expression was extremely solemn. Did you find any traces of Lord Lu? The guard said, the fatal injuries on the men of sacrifice were all left by the long sword. Every slash was so neat and sharp. Only the god-slaying sword in the Lord's hand can do that. We checked the surrounding area for miles. Other than these men of sacrifice, we didn't find any traces of the Lord. Yang Tao said, where is she? You didn't find Lord Lu? The guard hesitated for a while and said, perhaps, the Lord has already gone back. Yang Tao pointed at the corpses all over the ground and said, a rough estimate is at least 100 people. Do you think these men of sacrifice are useless? In his opinion, even if Jiang Pengji was still alive, she was most likely injured and hiding somewhere. They had to find her quickly. The leader of the guards blinked and said hesitantly, perhaps, they are really useless. You're still arguing with me? Yang Tao was furious at the guards who were not skilled in their work. Jiang Pengji was one of the most powerful dukes in the world. Couldn't she find a group of professional and responsible guards? What are these meticulously trained men of sacrifice doing? What are you guys doing? Eating rotten rice? Hurry up and find them. He was so angry that he was going to have a heart attack. The guards had no choice but to continue their search. But they searched all over the mountain and found no traces of their lord. If she was really injured and hiding, shouldn't she have left some clues for them to follow? Yang Tao fed the mosquitoes for half the night. Jiang Pengji leisurely strolled home on her horse. She hadn't even sat down for long when Yan Lin came to ask for her. Chapter 1628. Jiang Pengji chatted with salted fish along the way. When she returned, the sky was completely dark. She didn't turn off the streaming room. Instead, she gossiped with them to kill time. The chef in the residence served the dishes that had been kept warm. Jiang Pengji wasn't picky. There were 6 meat dishes, 3 vegetable dishes, and 2 soup dishes. She ate like a table full of people. Especially when the maids served the rice buckets that were the size of a wash basin, the bullet screen was stunned. AOD Lemming, a day apart feels like 3 years, but the streamer has turned into a rice bucket. Who eats with a wash basin as a unit of measurement? 7 or 8 strong men might not be able to finish the rice alone. Her appetite is really shocking. Tudu Feichio, sigh, the streamer didn't have such a big appetite in the past. I saw her eat 1.5 rice buckets for lunch with my own eyes. I used my wash basin to measure it. TSK. This is probably a real rice bucket. Kissing Kekiongtang, if the streamer transmigrates to our world one day, I suggest she become a foodie streamer. It's much better than the palace intrigue streaming room that sells dog meat. The palace intrigue that I've been looking forward to for more than 10 years has actually disappeared. What was the equivalent of this operation? It was equivalent to a web novel that had been serialized for 1,600 pages and had yet to enter the main topic. Be careful that the readers didn't finish it. Handsome lowly, how can you say that? If my streamer really transmigrates, will she still be a foodie streamer? Do you think the food that a foodie streamer eats is free? Does the streaming equipment cost money? If she was willing to give the baby a kiss, it would really be free. It wasn't the first time Jianghu was complained about her large appetite. It couldn't be helped. This body needed more and more energy every day as she trained and grew over the years. The energy contained in ordinary food couldn't keep up with the body's needs, so she could only rely on quantity to make up for quality. Anyway, she was a feudal lord. Even if she ate 10 or 20 basin-sized rice buckets for a meal, she could still afford it. At that moment, Jianghu saw a complaint that was trending. Jing, fortunately, we didn't go to the palace intrigue. With the streamer's appetite, any emperor would be scared to retreat, right? According to the palace intrigue dramas they watched, wasn't the Empress a cat's stomach? Jianghu's figure was indeed quite good, but she had a good appetite. Imagine if the emperor came to the back palace to have a meal with her. The emperor would reservedly eat half a bowl of rice, but Jianghu would finish all the dishes and gobble down 2 buckets of rice. No matter how beautiful she was or how powerful she was, the emperor would be so scared that he wouldn't be able to get hard, right? Jianghu was amused by the comment. If she didn't have enough self-control, she might have spat out the rice and affected her appetite. When they finished half a bucket of rice, a servant reported that Yan Lin was outside the manor and asked to see her. Jianghu let him in. When Yan Lin arrived, he saw Jianghu holding a bowl in her left hand and a pair of chopsticks in her right. The maids were scooping rice for her. Each bowl was piled high with rice grains. The man looked up at him with an innocent and confused look, as if he was asking Yan Lin why he was here. Have you eaten? Jianghu asked familiarly, then immediately corrected herself. I mean, have you eaten? Yan Lin tried his best to ignore the empty rice bucket and said calmly, I've used it in the mansion. Oh, then why are you looking for me? Jianghu didn't like people interrupting her when she was eating and disrupting the flow of her meal. Yan Lin said seriously, do you know where Xiaoyang went? I heard that he went out with Xiaoyang this afternoon. The system in this era was a pain in the ass. An official's official was not necessarily an official's official. Yan Lin was loyal to Yang Tao, so he was Yang Tao's official, not Jianghu's. Because of Yang Tao's special status, Jianghu didn't mind calling him Lord, but Yang Tao felt uncomfortable, so he used Lord Lu instead. Of course, other than Lord Lu, others could also call her Lord of Liuzhou, Lord Lanting, or Lord Ming. There were many ways to address her, but Jianghu's officials and generals all liked to call her Lord. They had gotten used to it after so many years. Yan Lin and the others followed Yang Tao's lead and called her Lord Lu, so Jianghu let them be. I'll just make do with it. What else can I do? Jianghu was surprised by Yan Lin's question. Xiaoyang didn't come back? I don't think so. He left before me, and he took the water route. Yan Lin looked serious. If I may ask, what did Lord Lu and Xiaoyang do in the afternoon? Jianghu said, drink. What else could they have done? Yan Lin was speechless. Jianghu continued, Xiaoyang can't hold his liquor well. He got drunk after 2 jars of hard liquor. I asked the guards to escort him up the river and came back first. I took the land route and hunted some wild animals along the way. I caught 2 ungrateful animals alive and wasted a lot of time on the road. Calculating the distance, Xiaoyang should have more than enough time to take a bath and take a nap. Why hasn't he come back yet? Yan Lin said seriously, I've searched everywhere, but I still haven't found any trace of Xiaoyang. Jianghu's expression changed. Did something happen to Yan Lin? Just in case, the ambushing death warriors not only set up an ambush in the forest, but also on the river? She put down her bowl and chopsticks and led Yan Lin to find Wei Si and the others. They were looking for Jiang Pengji as well. Why are you looking for me? Wei Si, Feng Zhen, and the others were livid. It was fine that his lord had slipped away, and it was fine that she had brought Yang Tao to swim and drink with him, but she had actually ditched her guards and was alone. Jiang Pengji was speechless. Oh no, she was exposed. After figuring out the whole story, Feng Zhen and the others sent someone to inform Yang Tao, who was feeding mosquitoes in the forest, to come back. As soon as Yang Tao came back, they couldn't hide anything. For example, the Lord had ditched the guards and was alone, or, the Lord had been ambushed by hundreds of men of sacrifice. Jiang Pengji was sitting in the main seat, but she had the illusion that she was being interrogated by 3 courts. She glared at Yang Tao, but he lowered his head and scratched the swelling on the back of his hand. The forest was too dirty. Even though there were no mosquitoes in this season, there were other insects. If one was not careful and got bitten, the skin that was exposed to the air would also swell. The more he scratched, the more itchy it was. Yan Lin secretly passed him a small bottle of ointment. If General Yang hadn't come back, when would the Lord have told us about the ambush? Wei Si seemed to be angry, and his aura was especially strong. Jiang Pengji was in the wrong, so she couldn't help but feel guilty. I was going to talk about it after dinner. Speaking of which, she hadn't finished her meal because of Yan Lin's interruption. Wei Si was choked by her answer. She was being ambushed by hundreds of men of sacrifice, and she was thinking about talking about it after dinner. Chapter 1629. Wei Si tried hard to keep the expression on his face, but the idle spectators could read something else from his expression. Tudu Feiqiu, Zixiao's feelings right now are probably indescribable. He's smiling on the outside and maintaining his gentle appearance, but he's probably cursing inside. There was a saying that went, even if the person you chose is mentally retarded, you still have to kneel down and assist him. Hong Kong Guazaran, the streamer's operation is so sexy. Beauty Ci really loves the streamer by not punching her to death. Guatianli, since all of you are pitying Beauty Ci, then I will pity the unlucky force that sent out the assassins. They were ambitious and wanted to take the host's life, but they never expected that the host's mind was only thinking about food. At the very least, he should respect the antagonist. He was quite serious about his work. Warrior rose. Haha, maybe the poor villain is waiting for the good news that the host is seriously injured or dead? The salted fish rejoiced in her misfortune. They knew Jiang Pengji's combat ability best. 100 or so kamikaze warriors could only make up one PUBG match. Did they really think they could kill her with such a small scale? What a joke. Even if Jiang Pengji was thrown in front of 99 cheats, they would still be able to win the game unscathed, let alone such a weak game. Therefore, the salted fishes giggled and copied a few bullet screen comments. Rue Yunhui, host, don't be a coward. You're the head of a family and an old woman. What's the point of being afraid of your wife? Xing Yuan Miao Miao, host, stay where you are and don't move. I will buy you the sharpest durian, the most uncomfortable keyboard, and the longest washboard. I guarantee that you will kneel comfortably and sincerely. Maybe Ci Marin will allow you to climb onto the bed because you are serious. Jiang Pengji was speechless. Were these salted fishes fans or haters of her? Or was it that the deeper the fan went, the darker it became? Even though salted fish cheered her on and encouraged her, Jiang Pengji was still a little cowardly when faced with the angry Wei Si. When it came to matters of principle, she was naturally the one who had the final say. Wei Si would also not argue with her on such matters, but when it came to trivial matters or logistics, Wei Si was usually the one who had the final say. Jiang Pengji rarely argued with Wei Si because of such things. Wei Si's character also determined that he would not easily get angry. However, the more good-tempered a person was, the more oppressive their aura would be when they were angry. Jiang Pengji was at fault in the first place, so she was terrified. Not only that, she even tried to blink her eyes and act cute to get away with it. I really plan to talk about this after dinner. Jiang Pengji's voice became softer and softer as she spoke. She looked as if she had been wronged. Feng Zhen sighed. He couldn't bear to see Wei Ci being too forceful and causing his relationship with his lord to become strained, so he spoke up to interrupt. Has the lord finished eating? Jiang Pengji shook her head and said, No, I'm only 30% full. When everyone heard the words only 30% full, they subconsciously felt a little moved. Their lord was still hungry. However, when he thought about his lord's appetite, even if this 30% full was a few bowls of rice, Yang Tao muttered in a low voice, being controlled like this, not even having enough to eat, this lord is really aggrieved. Yan Lin rolled his eyes at Yang Tao and sneered. At least he ate more than half a bucket of rice. Don't talk about eating dinner, you've been feeding the worm blood for the whole night. Yang Tao was speechless. He always felt that after he became the lord, the frequency of his companions criticizing him had increased. It wasn't like this in the past. Even though Jiang Pengji wasn't full, they wouldn't let her go back to eat before coming back to settle the matter of the ambush. Ordinary gentry families couldn't have mobilized such a large number of men of sacrifice. If Jiang Pengji didn't handle it well, it would intimidate the thieves and evildoers. In the future, all kinds of monsters would dare to mess with the Lord. In order to make an example out of others, the assassination had to be cleansed with blood. Yang Si didn't think it was messy enough. He laughed and said, It's just a bunch of unruly people. Even after mobilizing more than 100 men of sacrifice, they couldn't hurt the Lord at all. The assassination has become a joke. Why should the Lord care about them? In comparison, the Lord's meal is more important. Why don't you go to the back hall and have your meal first? We'll wait for you here. We'll discuss matters after the Lord finishes eating. Jiang Pengji's mouth twitched. She wanted to kick Yang Si. Did this guy want to see the world in chaos? Yang Si's every word sounded like flattery, but in fact, he was adding fuel to the fire and ridiculing her. How could Jiang Pengji dare to eat? She said seriously, No need. Business is more important. Yang Si smiled meaningfully. Wei Ci's expression softened slightly. Feng Zhen asked, Does the Lord have live assassins? I caught 2 alive and threw them to the subordinates to deal with. I reckon we'll have good news soon. Although the captured men of sacrifice would commit suicide to keep it a secret, with Jiang Pengji around, how could she let them succeed so easily? The 2 survivors were caught before they could commit suicide. Sometimes, living a life worse than death was more terrifying than death. Even if these men of sacrifice were well trained, they would still spit out the truth under torture. Coincidentally, as soon as Jiang Pengji finished speaking, someone came to report that the 2 survivors had confessed. Jiang Pengji asked, Confessed? Who instructed them to ambush me? The person replied, The Nan family of Fen Prefecture, Nansheng. Jiang Pengji crossed her arms and asked uninterestedly, The Nan family? Fen Prefecture? I dug up their graves. Why are you making things difficult for me? Wei Ci and the others stared with their eyes wide open. How thick-skinned was their lord to ask such a question? Not only did you dig up their graves, but you also confiscated half of their savings. It would be strange if the Nan family didn't fight to the death. However, they couldn't say this out loud. After all, the Lord still had to save face. Compared to Feng Zhen and the others' brainless protection, Yang Tao and the others reacted more normally. They didn't dare to say it out loud, but they were still muttering in their hearts. Why? Because the order was given by Jiang Pengji, but part of the specific operation was done by Yang Tao's old subordinates, especially the confiscation of the family's assets. Although Yang Tao and the others had a good time and took the opportunity to take revenge for the betrayal of the Nansheng aristocrats, they had also completely offended them. If not, Yan Lin and the others wouldn't have called Jiang Pengji by her name in private. Yang Tao had offended the Nansheng aristocrats, and Dongqing had no foundation. The slightest possibility of rebellion was nipped in the bud. In the future, no matter how Jiang Pengji developed, Yang Tao could only rely on her. He couldn't have the heart to rebel. The Nan family of Fen Prefecture belonged to the aristocrats in Nanxing. They used legal and illegal means to enclose thousands of acres of fertile land. When starving people were everywhere in the outside world, their granary was so rich that it could fatten up countless rats. They had countless tenants under their name. Their savings couldn't even be compared to the former national treasury. Jiang Pengji gave them a knife. The fat she cut off was richer than that of the Tao family, who ran the illicit salt business. They were rich. If Jiang Pengji didn't take advantage of them, who would she take advantage of? They jumped back and forth between her and the other feudal lords. She just took the opportunity to confiscate half of their family's assets and dig up a few graves. That was enough. Digging up graves was indeed immoral. Unfortunately, she was a penniless bandit. She did unusual things at unusual times. Chapter 1630. Jiang Pengji noticed everyone's strange expressions and coughed to ease the awkwardness. Is the evidence conclusive? I'm sure it's the Nan family of Fenzhou. The Nan family of Fenzhou was a large clan in Nanxing. They had money, food, and manpower. Even Yang Tao had to give them some face and respect. In layman's terms, the Nan family of Fenzhou was a sponsor and an investor. They were a proper financial backer. Who wouldn't show some respect to a financial backer? Jiang Pengji didn't play by the rules. She offended the Nan family of Fenzhou as soon as she arrived. She used force to snatch half of their family's wealth. The fertile land they took away was confiscated. Even their ancestors' graves were repeatedly raided. Even a clay figurine would have some anger, let alone the Nan family. The Nan family was furious. Naturally, they planned to kill Jiang Pengji. They checked Jiang Pengji's schedule in advance, bribed their spies, and arranged more than 100 kamikaze warriors along the way. Jiang Pengji didn't know about all this beforehand. No matter how clear she was, she couldn't control every Tom, Dick, and Harry. It was inevitable that there would be omissions. The Nan family could set up this ambush without alerting her. Her arrogance was partly to blame, but it was mostly due to the Nan family's calculations. If Jiang Pengji didn't have the ability to fight 100, it would be a dead end for any other feudal lord. Of course, on the other hand, she dared to be so reckless because she had such strength. If others imitated her, they would most likely die without a trace. If it was another feudal lord, the Nan family's plan would have succeeded. Wei Xi asked, "How do you plan to deal with them?" The words of the kamikaze warriors can't be trusted. Send someone to investigate again. If it's really the Nan family. Jiang Pengji suddenly laughed softly. Her lips opened slightly, revealing a few white teeth. There was an inexplicable white killing intent. If we don't kill them, are we going to keep them alive for the new year? If she didn't let the people of Nanxing see the consequences of trying to kill her, they wouldn't learn their lesson. Exterminate the clan? Exterminate them. No one objected to Jiang Pengji's decision. Even if some people felt that the decision to exterminate the entire clan was too harsh, they would not make their lord unhappy because of this reason. Jiang Pengji's officials, other than the few who surrendered with Yang Tao, were mostly from Dongqing. There were fewer gentry families than commoners, especially those who were trusted by the higher-ups. The commoners had an overwhelming victory. The landowning households had the upper hand in the middle and lower levels, but they also didn't have much say. The similarity between these landowning families and the landowning families of Nanxing was that they were landowning families. Just based on these connections, it was not enough for them to plead for mercy and risk Jiang Pengji bearing a grudge against them. In terms of benefits, the Nanxing aristocrats were not on the same side as them. To sum up, if the clan was exterminated, then so be it. They weren't the ones being exterminated anyway. The Nan family's ending was decided in a few words. Next, it was time to settle the debt of Jiang Pengji's solo activities. Wei Xi and the others did not say anything harsh. They did not even criticize Jiang Pengji. Instead, they reprimanded her until she hung her head low like a teacher. If it weren't for the fact that she was the Lord, Jiang Pengji really doubted that these people would ask her to write a guarantee. Why do I feel that in their eyes, my solo activities are more serious than the assassination this time? When Jiang Pengji's stomach was rumbling with hunger, she ate the cold dishes that she had not finished before. Including dinner and supper, there were a total of 3 big buckets of rice. It was already very late. She rarely streamed until so late. The salted fishes had watched her make a fool of herself the whole night, so she forced them to watch her eat. The guys in the streaming room were always full of golden sentences. Oh Shishu, if you were obedient and didn't stray from the group, the assassination would only happen once. However, you've always been unrestrained. In the future, you'll definitely encounter more than one assassination. Comparing the two, it's naturally more important to control you. Although the streamer is skilled and bold, Wei Ci and the others won't condone you endlessly if you act so recklessly, right? As time goes on, there might be people who can't stand it and become dissatisfied. The salted fishes joked around, but they were also very serious in their suggestions. Ancient strategists were a group of impenetrable goblins. They were very good when they were good, but if something did not go their way, they would simply turn their backs on you. The thinking of strategists was different from that of ordinary people. It was not impossible for them to rebel because they could not stand Jiang Pengji's actions. For example, there was a certain strategist in history who had a bad temper with his boss. He could not stand the boss's actions, so he jumped ship and trampled on her. There was often only a thin line between true fans and haters. If Jiang Pengji continued to court death, it was hard to guarantee that there would not be fans who would turn against her. In fact, many salted fishes in the streaming room had fans who turned against her. They used to love Jiang Pengji very much, but later, because of some unforeseen events, they hated her very much. These salted fishes were like this even across dimensions, let alone people who were in close contact with Jiang Pengji's bad habits every day. Jiang Pengji asked, "Is it that serious?" Many salted fishes who had entered the workplace told her with certainty that it would. If they had such a casual boss, even if the boss was powerful enough to defy the heavens and the earth, they would still jump ship after a long time. It was true that Jiang Pengji was the Lord, but she could not let her subordinates accept her unconditionally. The salted fish's words made sense. Jiang Pengji sighed and scratched her head in frustration. In the end, she chose to calmly reflect. One of her strengths was that she was not stubborn. If she was wrong, she was wrong. She would not make trouble out of nothing and insist that she was right. As she reflected, she realized that Wei Ci was really angry. The crowd dispersed. He did not look for her like he usually did, nor did he help her sort out the documents for the next day. He did not even look at her. Even though such awkwardness would not last long, Jiang Pengji was still not used to it. "You Abba, you should." Jiang Pengji knew that the old chief was lurking in the streaming room. She could not help but cover her face and say, "Am I that bad?" "You Abba, what do you think?" Jiang Pengji lay on the porch, her limbs spread wide as she basked in the moonlight. "I'm quite suspicious now. Why did you choose me as your successor back then? After all, I do have a lot of problems. You Abba, it's rare that you, who always defy the heavens and the earth, would have doubts about yourself." Jiang Pengji choked. "You Abba, because the flaws do not obscure the gems. You do have a lot of problems, but the 7th Legion is a combat legion, not a logistical legion. The main role of the legion leader is to command and motivate the troops. Didn't you do that well? I didn't ask you to become one with the soldiers or love them like your own children, right? You just have to lead them to victory on the battlefield." "But," Jiang Pengji said, "that way, I can be the commander of a combat legion, but I can't become the marshal, right? You're Abba, thank God. At least you know your place." Jiang Pengji could not help but facepalm. "I suddenly realized something. You once said that this was a test for me to inherit the position of marshal. If I only captured the system and made a great contribution, but my personality didn't change, I would only be rewarded with a great contribution at most. wouldn't the position of marshal still be mine? You Abba, congratulations, blind student. You've discovered something. Jiang Pengji was speechless. For all, who was the one who painted a big picture for me? Chapter 1631. Your Abba, do you think you're still a toddler learning how to walk? Do you need someone to teach you everything? There were some things that would only be effective if they had experienced it themselves and made up their minds to correct it. The Federation does indeed want to nurture you, but if you don't live up to expectations, it's not like they can't do without you. Besides, I've been retired for so many years, I don't want to get involved in the Federation's affairs anymore. Jiang Pengji was speechless. What he said made so much sense that she had nothing to say in response. Your Abba, this is indeed your chance, but you can't blame anyone if you can't take it. The old chief was the same as before. Jiang Pengji sighed softly and looked at the starry sky without saying a word. She really needed to reflect. Your Abba, it's not your fault. After all, Jiang Pengji was the successor that she had chosen herself. The old chief was patient with her. She was also clear about Jiang Pengji's strengths and weaknesses. It was not a problem for her to be the head of the army. Regardless of hardware or software, Jiang Pengji was considered top-notch. However, if she went one step further, her original advantage would become a disadvantage. If Jiang Pengji took the opportunity to reflect and correct herself, her future would be bright. What's not my fault? Your Abba, there's a huge difference between the commander of a combat army and the marshal of the Federation. It's normal that you're not used to it. Jiang Pengji scratched her head. She was suddenly curious. The old chief should be the most suitable candidate for the next marshal, right? Even if he retired, he would still be the most competitive with his experience. I heard you say that you had no choice but to retire because of your health, but the Federation's medical science is advanced. Are there any incurable diseases that they can't cure? Jiang Pengji was suddenly very curious. Why did her old boss give up on the possibility of further advancement? Even if it was because of a terminal illness, where could the medical technology be more advanced than the Federation? In addition, the old general had also mentioned the awakening. He had also revealed that the problem with her body was due to the so-called awakening. Perhaps, she would be able to find her own path from him. Your Abba, you should really review the history of the Federation army. Jiang Pengji was ridiculed, but she listened attentively. Your Abba, think about it. Among all the marshals in the Federation, other than a few at the beginning, which one of them came from a combat army? Jiang Pengji was speechless. The old general's words were double standards. He made it sound as if she wasn't from a combat division. Your Abba, do you think it's that easy to be a marshal? The difference between the two was even greater than the difference between a vassal and an emperor. The feudal vassals only needed to think about how to manage their own land, and it was fine for them to be willful once in a while. However, as an emperor, he had to consider all the people in the world. Every decision had to be carefully considered, because it could affect the fate of countless people. Similarly, the combat corps only needed to fight on the front lines. It was a blade aimed at the enemy, but the marshal was the leader who controlled the entire situation, from the front lines to the rear, no matter how big or small. The requirements of the two were not on the same level. If the army commander's requirement was 80 points, the marshal's requirement was 100 points. Jiang Pengji was speechless. She thought the old chief was going to talk about some conspiracy theory. I'm even more depressed after hearing what the old chief said. Your Abba, what are you depressed about? Jiang Pengji covered her face and said, does the Federation want to forcibly prop up a piece of mud with only 80 points of professional ability? Your Abba. If that's what you think, you're overreacting. The old chief did not know what kind of person Jiang Pengji was when she first transmigrated, but from the looks of it, she had indeed matured a lot. Any army commander in the Federation was an elite, one in a billion. For Jiang Pengji to be able to sit in this position and gain the unanimous approval of the other army commanders, it was not enough to just be good at fighting. Her other hardware and software had to be top-notch. Therefore, there was no doubt about her own excellence. To put it bluntly, what Jiang Pengji lacked was not the ability, but the mentality, responsibility, and attitude. If these were complemented, and the Federation trained and polished her for a few years or more, she would basically be qualified to be a marshal. For example, Jiang Pengji acted alone this time. Even though her original intention was to reduce the casualties of the guards, she put herself in danger. Even though the men of sacrifice could not harm her at all. No matter what, her actions brought worry and trouble to her subordinates. They were sincerely assisting her, but she treated them with such a childish attitude. Sooner or later, something bad would happen. Jiang Pengji liked to be mischievous. An appropriate amount of mischievous would make people feel closer to her, but excessive mischievous would only make people feel disgusted. If she could change for the better, curb her bad habits, and do things with more of a superior's demeanor, it would be considered a blessing in disguise. After reflecting for a long time, the old chief heard Jiang Pengji say one sentence. Sigh, Zixiao must be annoyed. Can you teach me how to coax him? You Abba, get lost. Quickly get lost. He doesn't learn from his mistakes and doesn't learn his lesson. The Federation will be doomed if we entrust him to this kind of person. Seeing the old chief fly off the handle, Jiang Pengji laughed heartily. It was as if the depression in her chest had disappeared without a trace. She lay in the corridor outside the room and slept for the whole night. In the morning, she was woken up by the maid. Why did I fall asleep here? Jiang Pengji opened her eyes in a daze. The bullet screen in the streaming room woke her up instantly. She forgot to turn off the streaming room last night. 5 million salted fish just stared at her for the whole night. The bullet screen was full of all kinds of complaints. What annoyed her the most was a particular bullet screen. These salted fish watched her sleep to see if she would freeze to death. Where were the promised fans? Each of them was more dedicated than the anti-fans. Jiang Pengji looked at the bullet screen and had an idea. She rubbed her nose and sneezed. Her eyes quickly became misty. My head is a little dizzy. I feel like the world is spinning. She didn't like people guarding outside the bedroom door when she slept. Most of them were outside the courtyard. Therefore, no one realized that Jiang Pengji slept in the corridor the whole night. It was very normal for her to fall sick in such a cold weather. That's right. She planned to use the trick of injuring herself to gain sympathy. Life was like a drama. It all depended on one's acting skills. Jiang Pengji was as strong as an ox. She had never been sick since she was young, but it didn't mean that she couldn't pretend to be sick. During her years as a genetic warrior, disguise was a compulsory course to assist in some assassination missions. Relying on her exquisite disguise, even the doctor was fooled. Wei Xi and the others rushed over the moment they heard the news. Of course, Jiang Pengji wouldn't say that she slept outside in the middle of the night. She only said that she caught a cold when she woke up. The first reaction of Wei Xi and the others was to question her. When they saw that she was so sick that her face was flushed and her eyes were bloodshot, their words were stuck in their throats. The salted fishes were dumbfounded by what they saw. Doesn't the streamer's conscience hurt to lie to the little angel? It turned out that pretending to be sick and weak was very effective. Everyone had some opinions at first, but now they were worried about her. Chapter 1632. A cold was something that could kill a person if it got serious. If Jiang Pengji did not die in the hands of the men of sacrifice, but instead was beheaded by a cold, it would be too ridiculous. Yan Lin frowned. Jingzi, don't you think this cold came at the right time? As long as Jiang Pengji handled it properly, the matter would be resolved in the blink of an eye. Yang Tao said, how could she pretend to be sick in front of so many doctors? It's just a minor illness. Who doesn't take some medicine? Yan Lin shook his head. Anything ordinary feels unnatural when it comes to this person. Just as Yang Tao had said, the kamikaze warriors had not harmed her at all, but she had fallen sick that night. Yang Tao laughed. Once bitten, twice shy. Lu Lanting is not that evil. Don't worry, she's human. Yan Lin rubbed his brows and said in a low voice, maybe I'm overthinking. Xiaoyang's suspicions are reasonable. Lu Lanting was ambushed in the morning and fell sick the next day. If the Nan family of Fan Prefecture hears about it, they will probably think that it's a cover-up. If they get caught because of this, the Nan family will not die a wrongful death. Yan Lin could not help but look at his friend. Not bad, this analysis actually made sense. Whether Lu Shi is really sick or not, the Nan family is doomed, Yan Lin said in a low voice. Lu Shi pretended to be sick and led his troops to attack Huang Song's rear. Now he's sick and the Nan family is digging their own grave. What a coincidence. Yang Tao could not help but ask, Xiaoyang, why do you call him by his name in private? Yan Lin said, I'm not the only one. Qian Su and a few of Yang Tao's old officials called him Lord Lu in public, but they still called him Lu Shi in private. Why? It was all because of Yang Tao. It was just a title. As long as Yan Lin and the others were not disloyal, Jiang Pengji would not hold it against them. Yang Tao said, I'm worried about you. Lu Lanting is sometimes broad-minded, but sometimes she's narrow-minded. Yan Lin's heart warmed. He smiled and said, I know what I'm doing. I won't give her a chance to do anything. Whether in the past or now, Yan Lin's interests were tied to Yang Tao's. Jiang Pengji had hurt Yan Lin and weakened Yang Tao. Yan Lin would never allow that to happen. At the same time, Wei Ci, who had been in a one-sided, cold war with Jiang Pengji for the whole night, blew on the boiled medicine to cool it down and brought it to her. Jiang Pengji couldn't help but feel the bitterness on her tongue when she smelled the medicine, but she couldn't do anything about it. She could only pinch her nose and drink it in one breath. Cough cough. How much gold thread did the doctor put in? It's so bitter, Wei Ci said, there is no Chinese gold thread in the medicine. Jiang Pengji said, it's also very bitter. Even the root of the tongue is bitter. Try it if you don't believe me. She pointed at her lips, and Wei Ci could not help but turn his head away. Wei Ci was well aware that old concubine's taste was naturally not to taste the dregs. I'm sick, but you don't even treat me well. Sad. Jiang Pengji drooped her head and accused Wei Ci in a hoarse voice, trying to pass the matter over. Wei Ci sighed, and there was some helplessness in his tone. My lord, are you really sick? Jiang Pengji was speechless. Wei Ci said, you've forgotten that I've been with you for more than 20 years in your previous life. Whether you're really sick or pretending to be sick, outsiders don't know, doctors and medical officials don't know, but I, as the person who sleeps by your side, know. My lord, are you trying to rely on pretending to be sick to make me forget about yesterday's matter? Ah. Jiang Pengji could not help but pull the blanket higher to cover her head. She said gloomily, I'm not pretending to be sick to fool you, Wei Ci said, my lord, are you trying to say that you spread the rumor that you have a cold and used it to mislead the Nan family of Fan Prefecture? To lure the snake out of its hole? It was such a coincidence that the Nan family might misunderstand that Jiang Pengji was really dead or seriously injured. In order not to cause panic, they used illness as a cover. When Jiang Pengji returned last night, the sky was already dark, and there was basically no one along the way. Except for a few confidants, no one else knew that Jiang Pengji had become a hands-off boss yesterday. As long as the news was blocked in time, the possibility of the Nan family being deceived was very high. But Wei Ci dared to guarantee with his head that this was definitely not the main reason for her pretending to be sick. Others would think carefully before taking action, but she would think about how to make up for the loophole after taking action. She could even deceive everyone's judgment and create an image of being thoughtful and cunning. Her escape route was blocked by Wei Ci, so Jiang Pengji naturally had nothing to say. Wei Ci said, I'm not saying this to criticize you, my lord. I just hope that you know my attitude towards this matter. No, I should say my attitude towards similar incidents. Back then, His Majesty disregarded his own safety and repeatedly put himself in danger. Although it was also for the peace of the court and to eliminate thieves and trifles, the sacrifice was too great. In the end, when His Majesty had just reached the age of knowing destiny, he was like a dragon in heaven. Back then, I did not have the courage to stop and advise him. It is still a matter of regret to this day. In this life, since you have given me the courage, there are some words that cannot be kept in my heart. There is no harm in saying them out. Jiang Pengji was silent for a long time. She blinked her eyes and looked at him sincerely. I will change. Wei Si's expression softened slightly. My lord does not need to make any guarantees to me. No one can restrain you except my lord. Jiang Pengji was speechless. If she had known that she would end up like this after acting recklessly, she would have thought more before doing anything. If I may be so bold as to say, you are my lord, our backbone, and the future ruler of the world. Your life and death is not only your own business, but also the fate of countless people in the world. Wei Si said, on the battlefield, you are not required to be more capable than a general in charging and breaking through enemy lines, nor are you required to be more resourceful than a strategist. These things are just icing on the cake. If not, they are harmless. To us, the Lord's safety is a miraculous elixir that is more magical than any tranquilizer. Do you understand? Jiang Pengji thought of the old chief's words last night and naturally understood what he meant. Different positions, different roles, and different actions and words were also different. When she was a feudal lord, everyone could tolerate it. In the future, if she did not change when her status improved, sooner or later, there would be discord. Jiang Pengji thought that she had changed a lot. She restrained herself and greatly reduced the frequency of her wandering on the battlefield. However, in the eyes of Wei Si and the others, she still did not do enough. It was good to have a lord who was good at fighting, but how could her subordinates feel at ease if she casually fell into a dangerous situation because of her strong martial arts? No one in this world could hurt her, but what about the Federation? The marshal, the feudal lord, and the emperor were similar in some aspects. Wei Si saw that she did not speak, so he softened his voice and said, I am not being bold and presumptuous, nor am I overstepping my authority to restrain my lord. Jiang Pengji said, I understand. I was not very mature in the past. It was my fault. You were just advising me bluntly. Chapter 1633. Jiang Pengji did not reflect on her actions. The Nan family of Fenzhou were like ants in a steamer basket. They were so anxious that their feet were burning. They had put in a lot of effort for this assassination. They had arranged everything properly to ensure that nothing went wrong. They could only succeed. That's what they said, but Lu Shi is very skilled in martial arts. I heard that he has the protection of a miracle. I don't know if those men of sacrifice can succeed. The head of the Nan family was very confident, but his brother did not think so. He had been anxious for a few days. From the time the plan was made to the day of the attack, his heart was always in the air. The ominous premonition grew stronger day by day. Even if Lu Shi has 3 heads and 6 arms, can she survive the ambush of more than 100 men of sacrifice? What protection of a miracle? It's just Lu Shi's lies to mislead the public. How can you believe such nonsense? Ridiculous. The head of the Nan family could not stand his brother's cowardice. He disliked his unlucky guesses even more. He had taken a great risk in planning to ambush Jiang Pengji. If he was not careful, he and his family would be smashed to pieces. Even if he did not show it on his face, there was an indescribable pressure in his heart. It was suffocating. His brother did not know how to share his burden. Instead, he was cheering for the enemy. Elder brother, I didn't mean that. The elder brother, who was almost 50 years old, glared and asked sternly, if you didn't mean that, then what did you mean? The younger brother was speechless. He knew that his elder brother would not listen to him. He could only accompany him to wait for news. More than 100 men of sacrifice had been sent out. It was like an arrow on a bow. It was too late to say anything. For the hundreds of years of inheritance of the Nan family of Fenzhou, he could only pray for the success of the ambush. As long as Jiang Pengji died, the forces gathered by her would fall apart. The external threat would be easily solved. In this way, not only could the Nan family take revenge, but they could also take advantage of the chaos to rise. The hatred between Jiang Pengji and the aristocrats of Nansheng was not ordinary. First, there was the grudge of digging graves and disturbing the ancestors. Later, there was the hatred of confiscating family property and plundering tenant farmers. The loss of money was nothing. They could earn it back in the future. But the loss of face and status could not be forgiven. The Nan family of Fan Prefecture was also a prestigious family that had existed for hundreds of years. How could they tolerate a bunch of scum peeing on their heads? What Hejin Lu family? They were just a small family that couldn't be shown in public and didn't have much of a foundation. They really thought too highly of themselves and even dared to call themselves a landowning family. Ever since Jiang Pengji entered Nansheng, everything she did made the aristocrats of Nansheng detest her from the bottom of their hearts. How are these landowning households? They're clearly shameless bandits. Take the loss of the Nan family in Fan Prefecture as an example. Jiang Pengji not only sent people to dig up a large number of gold and silver artifacts buried with their ancestors in their graves, but also took away the wealth they had accumulated. She also used force to take away their tens of thousands of fertile fields. Even if the Nan clan had used all sorts of methods to seize these fertile lands from the hands of the common people. However, once the things were in their pockets, they belonged to them. If Jiang Pengji snatched them from their hands, she would be a bandit. It was easy to imagine what his future would be like if he were to make a living under the noses of such a feudal lord. Those who strike first gain the upper hand and those who strike later suffer the calamity. The Nan family, whose fundamental interests were touched by Jiang Pengji, finally took the risk out of desperation. Reporting, First Master, Second Master, there's news. The Nan brothers anxiously waited for the news. They waited from dusk until the moon was in the middle of the sky. Finally, they received the secret report from the housekeeper. Lu Shi is dead? The housekeeper calmed his rapid breathing and said excitedly, Lu Shi caught a cold and is seriously ill. He won't see anyone. Cold? The master of the Nan family curled his lips into a cold smile. He caught a cold at this time. Is it true or is he trying to cover it up? He didn't fall sick earlier or later, but he fell sick after the men of sacrifice took action. Only a fool would believe that. Oh yes, has the men of sacrifice returned? He didn't let the pleasant surprise get to his head. Instead, he asked about the whereabouts of the men of sacrifice. If the men of sacrifice also said that Jiang Pengji was dead, then she was really dead. They haven't returned yet. The housekeeper suddenly lowered his voice and said, however, this matter is most likely successful. The master of the Nan family asked, what do you know? The housekeeper explained in detail in his ear and analyzed. According to the news, Yang Tao and his guards stayed outside for a long time before returning. They looked hurried and solemn. I think it's most likely that Lu Shi was careless and went out to hunt without anyone with him. He was ambushed by the men of sacrifice. The men of sacrifice in the manor are all elites, but Yang Tao and the others can't be underestimated. For safety reasons, it's normal that the men of sacrifice didn't report back immediately. The most powerful lord in the world was assassinated. The news would definitely shake the entire 9 prefectures and 4 seas. For the sake of his own life, Yang Tao couldn't let the ambushed men of sacrifice go. He would definitely search all over the mountains and plains. For the safety of the Nan family, the men of sacrifice had to shake off their pursuers. It would take a lot of time to go back and forth. This matter shouldn't be publicized. Send someone to inquire again. The next day, Jiang Pengji was still nowhere to be seen. It was as if the lord who skipped work for 6 to 10 hours a day had vanished into thin air. Not only had Jiang Pengji vanished into thin air, but the reactions of Yang Si and the other important officials were also very strange. It was as if a storm was brewing. Various details were laid out in front of him. The master of the Nan family completely believed that Jiang Pengji was dead. Now that Lu Shi is dead, what's the use of Yang Si and the others sealing off the news? The master of the Nanqing family sneered harshly. Lu Shi has no children. He's an old and widowed woman. Yang Si and the others want to support a new lord, but they don't have a candidate. There are hidden dangers within, and there's an Shui outside. He snorted coldly. He seemed to have guessed that Jiang Pengji's death couldn't be kept under wraps and that the forces under her would fall apart. The Nan family didn't pin their hopes on an Shui. Their previous cooperation proved that an Shui was also a fraud. It was better to rely on oneself than on others. Rather than placing heavy bets on an unreliable person, it was better to rise up on their own. The Nan family secretly contacted a few aristocratic families that were on good terms with them and plotted in secret. At the same time, they sent people to quietly spread the rumor that Jiang Pengji might have died. They used this to shake the morale of Yang Si and the others. Therefore, similar rumors quietly emerged in the tea houses and taverns. The water army didn't immediately say that Jiang Pengji was dead. Instead, they disguised themselves as passers-by and asked her where she had been recently. She hadn't been seen for so long. Could something have happened? The other water army took the opportunity to take over the topic and slowly set the pace. After 2 or 3 days of fermenting, the rumors began to take shape. Seeing this situation, Yang Si smiled and teased Wei Ci. Zixiao has met his match. Wei Ci said, there's no evidence. His methods are clumsy. Yang Si was speechless. He was indeed the chief coach of the water army, Wei Zixiao. His words were domineering. Are we just going to ignore it? Wei Ci said, as long as my lord appears in front of people, such rumors will fall apart on their own. There's no need to pay attention to them. Yang Si rubbed his chin and said, the Nan family took action without any evidence. Aren't they afraid that it's a trap? A cornered beast will do something desperate. Wei Ci said, whether it's a trap or not, the Nan family is determined to send people to ambush us. There's no room for negotiation. If it were Wei Ci, he would also be afraid that a long delay would bring trouble. The Nan family's choice was very normal. It was right to leave the matter of rumors to Yang Si. Yang Si didn't care much about it. He was more curious about his lord's changes in the past 2 days. He suddenly asked, is there anything wrong with my lord? What's wrong? Wei Ci asked. Yang Si pointed to his head and said with a solemn expression, everything is wrong. It's as if she's a different person. My lord has been diligent in her administration these days. I wouldn't dare to do this even in my dreams. Zixiao, say, could it be that the lord has been possessed by some wild monster? Chapter 1634. Before Wei Tsong was imprisoned in the back mountain of the imperial mausoleum, he had once been a flirtatious youth. He could still remember those years when the mountain flowers were in full bloom. Young men and women chatted happily, drinking elegantly, or chatting merrily. They were full of youthful spirit. The night wind rustled the curtains. Wei Tsong leaned against the side of the table and slept lightly. He gradually fell asleep. Today's dream was unusually colorful. Everything became clear. He looked at the contents of the dream and vaguely remembered that this was the Golden Scale Academy. His gaze fell on the waterside pavilion. Seeing a group of youths in blue and white uniforms chatting and laughing together, he could not help but smile. Wei Tsong remembered. So it was that day. Which day? Naturally, it was the day his mother broke the legs of the Minister of Work's son. Wei Tsong could not help but approach in an attempt to hear more clearly. At this moment, a familiar-looking youth said with a smile, "Tsk. Do you think that the Minister of Works is Sure Yu's mother? She actually broke into the academy with such a thick stick and dragged her son out to break his legs. I was scared to death." The youth was also the son of a court official. He shared a table with Sure Yu, the son of the Minister of Works. When the Minister of Works rushed in and dragged his son out by the collar, he was scared out of his wits. I don't know if she's his mother or not, but it's doubtful if Shiryu is his son. The other youth opened his folding fan. His face was slightly round and immature, clearly the appearance of Wei Tsong when he was young. His brows were brimming with vitality, and there was no sign of the loneliness he had experienced after so many years. The Minister of Works is such a talented person, so why is his son so unworthy of cultivation? In my opinion, it's good enough that Shiryu only had his legs broken by his mother. She didn't kill him out of consideration for their blood relationship. Shiryu was the son of the Minister of Works, Biyao Wuxia, and her husband, Shizhong. Because Shiryu was the only male in the family, he was unruly, spoiled by his father and grandmother. He acted arrogantly and often bullied the ordinary students of the academy. Wei Tsong was only the concubine's son of the grand tutor. He had naturally been bullied by Shiryu and harbored resentment in his heart. The youths were curious. Wei Tsong, do you know the inside story of Shiryu being beaten? Everyone was very surprised. The little tyrant Shiryu's leg was actually broken by his own backer. This could be said to be the news of the year. The wooden stick that Minister of Works Biyao Wuxia used to break her son's legs was as thick as a strong man's arm. Why was the little tyrant so arrogant and despotic? Wasn't it because he had a mother who was the Minister of Works? Shiryu's father? The two of them had already separated 800 years ago. Shiryu's father, Shizhong, was even more useless. Naturally, I know some inside information. Shiryu deserves this. The youth said, Shiryu has mediocre looks, mediocre talent, and mediocre looks. Logically speaking, he shouldn't be likable, but he has roots. Although the Minister of Works was there to correct and supervise him, it wasn't easy to be a strict mother. Shiryu was instigated by his family to leave his biological mother. In the end, he made a big mistake. Even a barbecued pork is better than him. Young Wei Tsong continued, 2 days ago, an imperial censor reported to the Minister of Works, saying that she didn't teach her son well. She allowed her son to force women into prostitution, commit violence on the streets, and cripple people on horseback. The Minister of Works returned to his residence to investigate and confirmed that the matter was true. In a fit of rage, he beat his son with a rod. How did you know this news? Young Wei Tsong said, heavenly secrets cannot be revealed. There's always a way that I know. Seeing his dream self reveal the childish and gloating smile unique to youths, Wei Tsong's lips curled into a bitter smile. He clearly remembered that because of this matter, he had been punished by his father when he was young. His father heard that he was gossiping behind someone's back and criticized others. He said that this was not the conduct of a gentleman and punished him to copy books. The young Wei Tsong was in his rebellious period. His father's indiscriminate punishment made him very indignant. How was it that he wanted to make things difficult for Shiryu? It was clearly Shiryu, the little tyrant, who privately bullied and humiliated Wei Kong. How did he humiliate him? He cursed him to his face for being concubine Ting's son, saying that his status was lowly, and that he didn't have the right to chat with a student from a good background. Not only did he humiliate his background and his mother, but he also humiliated his father's defeat in the imperial court several years ago. More than once, Wei Tsong was blocked in a remote corner of the academy by this little tyrant. He suffered these grievances, but he didn't dare complain to his father. Although Shiryu's words were unpleasant to hear, there was one thing he was right about. His father was only the grand tutor, and he was only concubine Ting's son. If his father sought justice from the Minister of Works for him, it would implicate his father's already bad official career. As the saying went, birds of a feather flocked together. The little tyrant, Shiryu, was a hedonistic son of rich parents, and his scoundrelly friends weren't good people either. Wei Tsong's background was lowly, but he was ranked among the best. He was often used as an example by his teacher to attack these slackers, imperceptibly attracting a lot of hatred. They knew that Wei Tsong was easy to bully and had no backing. They often joined forces to embarrass him, and verbal humiliation was considered light. There were a few times when they got into a conflict. Wei Tsong was alone and weak, and his opponents outnumbered him. He was punched a few times. The place where they fought was very hidden, and they were very careful, not leaving behind any evidence. Wei Tsong's heart was only filled with anger and hatred. Every time this happened, he couldn't help but resent his background, but there was nothing he could do. He could only swallow the bitter fruit. He didn't dare tell his father, afraid that he would make things difficult for him. Fortunately, he had a few peers he was on good terms with, and they became his only channel to confide in. These peers were none other than the sons of his father's elder brother, Wei Tsong's cousins. In terms of age, Wei Tsong was about the same as them. In terms of seniority, Wei Tsong was their uncle. Now that he thought about it, it was the care and persuasion of these good friends that slowly alienated the young Wei Tsong from his father. The young Wei Tsong coldly watched the scenes that flashed through his dream. The scenes that had once made him angry and resentful couldn't stir up any of his emotions at this moment. The young Wei Tsong saw his younger self being locked in a room copying books 20 times. He stubbornly refused to admit his wrongs to his father and stubbornly refused to stop writing. He copied from day to night before finally falling into a deep sleep. TSK, his temperament is quite like mine. Very stubborn. The young Wei Tsong's pupils constricted in shock. He saw the door being gently pushed open, as if afraid of disturbing the person inside. A tall woman stood outside the door. Time hadn't left many traces on her face, but her aura had become more restrained with the passage of time. This subject has failed to teach. The young Wei Tsong saw his father, whom he hadn't seen for many years, enter the room behind the woman in a green robe. His words seemed to be filled with emotion. Don't ask for forgiveness so easily. I've seen many people ask for forgiveness during the day. Are you going to do the same? The woman rebuked him, but her tone was very gentle. She bent down and picked up Wei Tsong, who was sprawled on the table, and gently placed him on the bed. She looked lovingly at the youth's eyes. At the end of the day, it's because I, as a mother, wasn't diligent enough. I didn't know that an academy student would commit such vile acts. Since your majesty has said so, shouldn't this subject apologize with death? The man's eyes were filled with apology and self-blame. He had raised Wei Tsong for so many years, but he hadn't realized that his child had suffered so much at Golden Scale Academy. If he hadn't found out by chance, he didn't know how long he would have been kept in the dark. He didn't know how to make up for it even if he wanted to. The woman said, "You and I are both at fault. It's not your majesty's fault. Your majesty has a myriad of affairs to attend to every day. Just government affairs take up 16 to 16 hours. How can you have the extra energy to keep an eye on your child's matters at the academy?" The man helped young Wei Tsong tuck into the blanket and said softly, "The matter with the Minister of Works, her son has committed so many mistakes. It's already benevolent of her not to take that little beast's life." The woman sneered. "Is my son also someone that little beast can casually insult? If Biyao doesn't break his legs, I'll take my saber and chop off his head." Biyao raised her rod and broke her son's legs in public. On the surface, it was to punish and teach her son a lesson, but in reality, it was the woman's instigation. The imperial censor criticized Biyao for several days in a row, and the woman also had the intention of dealing with him severely. The intelligent Biyao naturally knew what to do. Was it more serious to have his legs broken by his mother or to have his head chopped off by the emperor in a fit of rage? Choose for yourself. Although Biyao didn't know of Wei Tsong's past, she had followed Her Majesty for many years and understood Her Majesty's intentions. She was serious. The man sighed softly and tucked Wei Tsong's scattered hair behind his ears with his fingers. The woman said, "Golden Scale Academy should also rest and reorganize. If something like this happens again, I'll cut off their parents as well." It was originally a place for students to study, but she didn't expect such a bullying scandal to appear in the Golden Scale Academy just a dozen years after it was established. Of all things, bullying Wei Kong. She simply didn't want to live. The woman said she wanted to reorganize the Golden Scale Academy, so she would definitely reorganize the entire academy. In that case, Ci and Fusho will find an opportunity to have a good talk and console him. The woman nodded. Yes. The young Wei Tsong watched everything in his dream. His eyes were sore and swollen, and 2 streams of hot tears rolled down his cheeks. So that was the case. When Wei Tsong was young, he was bullied by his classmate, the little bully. However, after the Minister of Works, Biyao Xia, personally broke Shi Yu's legs, those bastards became obedient and no one came to provoke Wei Tsong again. At that time, Wei Tsong naively thought that Biyao Xia's actions had a deterrent effect. So this was the truth. His mother was busy every day, yet she still took time out of her busy schedule to help him vent his anger. His father had also tried to talk to him and console him, however, the young Wei Tsong was willful and rebellious. He had long been instigated and bewitched by others, so he couldn't listen to his father's nagging and lecturing. If he could turn back time, he wouldn't have said those hurtful words to his sister, nor would he have been instigated to harm his parents. Vaguely, Wei Tsong heard a familiar call from the horizon. He struggled to open his eyes and found Ning Wanyue kneeling to the side, looking at him with concern. Wanyue? What happened? Wei Tsong heard his voice hoarse, and his face was wet. Was Langjun a nightmare just now? Ning Wanyue used a handkerchief to wipe away the tears on his face. Wei Tsong lowered his head and leaned on her shoulder. The candlelight elongated the shadows of the two snuggling together. Chapter 1635. Jingrong, do you have the guts to tell this to the Lord? Just because the Lord was diligent in governing, they suspected that she had been possessed by a wild spirit. Wasn't this indirectly saying that the Lord had been too lazy in the past? Even if Yang Si was telling the truth, the Lord did not like to hear it. If she really knew about it, Wei Ci was worried that the weeds on Yang Si's grave would be 3 feet tall. I don't have the guts. I don't dare to do it. I was wrong. Yang Si quickly waved his hand. His desire to live had once again saved his life. Wei Ci said, "My lord has grown up. It's our good fortune." In his previous life, His Majesty had only started to work diligently after he had ascended to the throne. He was like a student who had wasted a whole summer vacation and was frantically rushing to finish his homework in the last few days. He had started to change early in this life, so he expected that his future situation would be much better than his previous life. At the very least, he would be able to avoid alienating his subjects to the greatest extent. Wei Ci's sentiments came from the bottom of his heart, but Yang Si could not help but ridicule his prehistoric power. Grown up? The age at which people of the same age are going to propose marriage for their children? Yang Si glanced at Wei Ci with a strange look in his eyes and smiled awkwardly. Grow up. Lord is getting old at this age. Wei Ci, there was no need for his lord to make a move. He wanted to send Yang Si to paradise now. Even though Jiang Pengji always said that she was a slacker in her studies and that her cultural courses were the lowest among all the commanders, it did not mean that she was the slacker in everyone's impression. Sabanan, Peking University is still alright, said that Peking University was still alright, so was Peking University really just still alright? To ordinary people, it was still an existence that they needed to look up to. Similarly, when Jiang Pengji said that she was a slacker, it was only in comparison to people of the same level. Once she started to correct herself, everyone would be able to experience the crushing power of their lord in all aspects. Yang Si and the others were happy for less than 2 days before they complained incessantly. Jiang Pengji could usually finish the government affairs that normally took 3 days. What should she do with the remaining time? Naturally, it was to bring forward the matters that would happen in the next 4 or 5 days. As Jiang Pengji's subordinates, Yang Si and the others had to keep up with the pace. The faster the pace, the more pressure they were under. At this moment, Yang Si, Feng Zhen, and the others missed the days when their lord was a hands-off boss. Since her lord was a hands-off boss, she didn't delay her work. Now that she was in her workaholic mode, she was practically going to F*ck someone to death. In the past, I indulged myself in pleasures and neglected government affairs. Fortunately, you did not abandon me and have been tolerant until now. From now on, I will not disappoint you. Jiang Pengji's words were a positive promise. Not only did she admit that she had been distracted by playfulness, but she also promised that she would change. As a lord, she calmly admitted her mistakes to her subjects. Just this magnanimity alone was admirable. Yang Tao's old officials, who had been biased against her before, now looked at her in a new light. Of course, some people were gratified, while others expressed doubts. They thought that Jiang Pengji's popularity only lasted for a short period of time. Who asked her previous image to be so deeply ingrained in people's hearts? Not only these people, but even some of the salted fish thought so. They never expected Jiang Pengji to be serious and do what she said. Qin Feng Wenshu, the originally calm and mischievous host, has suddenly become a leader. I'm not used to it. Aod Luming, really? Why do I feel that the host still likes to smile so much? Which leader would be like her? Boss, I want a carrot. Who said that being serious in speech and manner is the style of a leader? Tudu Feichio, I feel that the current host is more in line with her identity. Hippie fooling around is indeed very close to the people, but it is not always good to be close to the people. There will always be people who think that being close to people with power is equivalent to having power. Not everyone is self-aware. The host is friendly to them, but they feel that the host is easy to bully and does not have the dignity that a ruler should have. Once the subjects feel that the ruler has lost his dignity, they will overstep and even trample on him. There is no such phenomenon now because the host is still a warlord in troubled times. She has a strong murderous aura. No matter how cheeky she is, it can't hide the fact that she has killed countless people. But in the future, when the world is stable and the people live and work in peace, there will always be people who are blind and only remember the host's closeness to the people. They will forget the host's ruthlessness and then do something that oversteps. Comfort will erode a person's vigilance and they will forget their previous caution. Diwu Luo, you're right, boss. Being close to people with power and mistakenly thinking that you have power is a deep-rooted bad habit of insatiable greed. This reminds me of the babysitter case that caused an uproar a few years ago. The employer gave the babysitter a high salary and let her eat at the same table with them. He gave her red packets on holidays and helped the babysitter's son find a job. The employer treated the babysitter so well that the babysitter felt that she was superior. She stole and abused the child. In the end, because of a conflict, she wanted to kill the employer. She brought people to rob and kill the employer. There are countless similar cases. On the whole, the idle people were mostly supportive. Jiang Pengji gathered her thoughts. She had the intention to hide it, so she did not appear in public for several days. She had been recuperating from illness. Only a few trusted subordinates could see her. There was no doubt about the loyalty of Yang Si and the others. The spies on the Nan family's side naturally could not find anything. When they did not receive any news from the kamikaze warriors, the Nan family was initially a little shaken. No matter how careful the kamikaze warriors were, once they succeeded, they would get rid of the pursuers and return as soon as possible. But there was no news at the moment. There must be something wrong when things are abnormal. When they heard that Jiang Pengji had been sick since that day of winter swimming, they were not sure. Their hearts were like wild grass straddling the wall, swaying left and right. The news of Jiang Pengji's death in an ambush among the people became more and more intense. Wei Ci, the chief instructor of the Navy, not only did not come forward to suppress it, but he also sent people to add fuel to the fire. Not only did it make the people believe it, but even some officials who did not often see Jiang Pengji were also shaken. Especially Yang Tao's former subordinates. A few people secretly tried to find out what Yang Tao had said. What did they want to find out? Of course, they wanted to find out if Yang Tao had taken the opportunity to rise again. As a feudal lord, how could he be willing to bow down to another person? Of course, because the news of Jiang Pengji's death in an ambush had not been confirmed, when these people tried to find out, they were very vague. It could not be used as evidence even if it was spread out. Yang Tao took into account their past friendship and sternly reprimanded those people, dispelling their thoughts. He knew very well whether Jiang Pengji was dead or not. The ambush of more than 100 kamikaze warriors could not hurt her at all. If they had any ulterior motives under her nose, they would not even know how they died. Yan Lin, the shrewd man, deliberately reminded Yang Tao not to reveal that Jiang Pengji was still alive, but he could not say that she was dead either. He had to be vague and ambiguous. Yang Tao suddenly understood, and his face looked awkward. Xiaoyang, are you worried that we have a mole among us? Yan Lin sighed. Whether the mole is one of us or not, we have to clear our name as soon as possible. Jiang Pengji was caught red-handed by the kamikaze warriors. Someone had to be a mole for the Nan family and pass the news to them. On the day of the incident, only Jiang Pengji, Yang Tao, and their guards were there. If Jiang Pengji's people were not bribed by the Nan family, then there was something wrong with Yang Tao. Chapter 1636. The Nan family chose this time to make a move on you because they want you to be their scapegoat. Regardless of whether the assassination is successful or not, you are the most suspicious person. If you want to clear your name, the only way is to help Lord Lu. Lord Lu. You don't need to do anything, but you don't need to do anything wrong. Yan Lin asked Yang Tao to help Jiang Pengji cover up the lie to clear his partner's name. Besides, Jiang Pengji was also aware of their every move. She knew better than anyone else what those old officials with ulterior motives had said and done to Yang Tao. Yan Lin asked Yang Tao to do this because he wanted to prove his innocence. There were too many twists and turns. Yang Tao didn't need to understand. He just needed to do what he was told. Yan Lin would take care of the rest for him. Yang Tao secretly bid farewell to his former minister, worry written all over his face. He said, I don't know how many spies I have around me. Why do they have to come after me? Yan Lin said, people in troubled times have no choice. Zhengzi doesn't want to get involved, but you can't avoid these things just because you don't want to. There would always be something that would force people, whether they were forced or willing, to walk on this thorny single-log bridge. It could be morality, ideals, protection, desire, power. Yang Tao did it to protect his family. What about Jiang Pengji? Even if there are thousands of people, I will go. Yang Tao was confused. What did you say? There are thousands of paths. Everyone has their own path, big or small, public or private. There is no such thing as high or low. You can follow your heart and do whatever you want. Thousands of paths lead to the same destination, Yan Lin said with a smile. I'm just curious. What was Lu Shi's original intention for walking on this path? Was it for the greater good or for love? No matter how I think about it, I only feel that this sentence seems to be the most suitable. Yang Tao blinked. He didn't understand. Yan Lin put his hand on his forehead and said, to put it simply, Lord Lu is a man with great ambition and a big heart. Yang Tao smiled. It's rare to see Xiaoyang praise someone like that. What a high compliment. Yan Lin shook his head. Our paths are different. Yan Lin didn't want to risk his life just to watch this kind of person. He didn't want to go all out and join in the fun. Using a marathon as an example, Yang Tao divided the entire 40-kilometer race into 8 segments. He only had to run 5 kilometers each time, and Yan Lin could take his time. Contestant Jiang Pengji, on the other hand, wanted to finish 100 kilometers in one go. 40 kilometers was only her interim goal. Yan Lin admired her courage and ambition, but he didn't have the energy to finish the race with her. Yang Tao rested his chin on his hand. Xiaoyang, do you think I should confess to Lu Lanting and ask for her forgiveness? After all, they were old officials. Their relationship over the years was not fake. Yang Tao also did not want Jiang Pengji to settle scores with them. Yan Lin looked down. There's no need. Lord Lu won't do anything to them. At most, he'll scare them a little. Overall, it's more of a scare than a real danger. Between husband and wife, there were dozens of times throughout the year when the thought of separation would pop up. Their teeth and tongues would even fight, let alone between the monarch and the minister. He did not believe that Yang Si and the others had not thought of strangling their lord to death when Jiang Pengji repeatedly stood them up. However, it wasn't like they could put their thoughts into practice. They could just beat them up and educate them. There was no need to kill them all. Yang Tao let out an "oh" sound and felt relieved. Yan Lin said, "If it's possible." Yang Tao turned to look at him. "What?" "Don't leave your words unfinished." Yan Lin added, "Jingzi will try his best to confiscate the Nan family." Anyway, Jiang Pengji had borrowed Yang Tao's hands to confiscate many of the Nanxing aristocrats. She had offended them all. Digging up graves, robbing people's wealth. Jiang Pengji bore half of the blame, and Yang Tao bore the other half as the executor. There was no need to worry when there were too many lice. There was no harm in wiping out the Nan family. If the Nan family died in Yang Tao's hands, not only would they stand firm, but they would also be cleared of suspicion. Yang Tao let out an "oh" sound and did not think too much about it. He just smiled and squinted his eyes. "I heard that the Nan family is rich. That's a fat sheep. It's a good job indeed. I wonder if I can get it." It was an unspoken rule in the industry to seize some of the loot during a war. Many generals had made their fortunes by doing this. Now that there was still a war to fight, it would not be easy to raise a family when the world was at peace. Of course, as long as you ask. As a former feudal lord, Yang Tao's identity was a shortcoming, but it had its advantages. For example, if he took the initiative to perform meritorious deeds, no one could compete with him. Why? Of course, it was to appease Yang Tao and satisfy his small requests without affecting the overall situation. Yang Tao rejected the temptation of the former officials. Without a backbone, they could only sigh and give up. They continued to observe. The Nan family could not sit still. They joined forces with a few aristocrats who had a grudge against Jiang Pengji to stir up trouble. Unfortunately, they died before they could succeed. Their conspiracy was only at the theoretical level when Yang Tao and his men discovered it. The letters and testimonies that they found were all preserved. The idle people were stunned by the operation. Junguo lauda lauda, no. Shouldn't the streamer continue to pretend to be sick and dead? When the Nan family comes out with their troops, you will jump out and slap them in the face at the critical moment? They were only at the theoretical stage, and you already took action. It's not satisfying enough to slap them in the face. What was this like? It was like Jiang Pengji's eviscerating hand cut to a 5-minute trailer of an 81-episode political drama. Basically, the Nan family united the aristocrats. Just as they were about to go on stage, Jiang Pengji kicked them off the platform. The pace of this drama was as fast as the reincarnation of a hungry ghost. Even instant noodles lasted longer than it. One of the idle people asked the question that was on everyone's mind. Yiwu Yanling, so, why did the streamer pretend to be sick and dead? To raid a few more houses, Jiang Pengji said. Didn't the Nan family unite 6 aristocrats in Fenzhou? They died a worthy death. Why did they have to wait for the fire to burn down the house before putting out the fire? It was better not to have this kind of hero reversal. Jiang Pengji watched the fire burn a few books with cold eyes. The smoke sounded the alarm and the small fire was put out. The small fire that the Nan family stirred up was the small fire that did not amount to anything. She sneered. Didn't the Nan family curse me for robbing their family property and digging up their ancestral graves as bandits? I spared their lives out of kindness and did not care about my own well-being. Then I will take the lives of their entire family. I will kill the chicken to warn the monkey so that the later generations will see the consequences. The Nan family was just a clown in her eyes. She did not take them seriously. It was just that they thought too highly of themselves. They jumped up and down and did not let others have peace. If she did not set a role model, did the people of Nanxing really think that she was a soft persimmon that could be trampled on at will? With the fall of the Nan family, the aristocrats of Nanxing should calm down a little. If they still did not calm down, Jiang Pengji could only set a trap for them and kill them until they all shut up. As for the spy, Chapter 1637. Everyone thought that the spy was on Yang Tao's side. Even Yang Tao himself was so worried. Unexpectedly, the final investigation revealed that Jiang Pengji had a problem. The spy bribed by the Nan family was not a trusted official. He was not even considered a mid-level official. He was just a small official who had no sense of existence but could grasp some of Jiang Pengji's whereabouts. Jiang Pengji did not know whether to be angry or glad when she heard the news. She was angry at this person's betrayal and deception. She was glad that the person who made a mistake was not the trusted official. When Wei Ci learned of this, he was really relieved. Although the emperor in the previous life was different from the lord in this life, the nature of the two was still the same. They hated betrayal the most. If a small character betrayed her, then so be it. The lord's anger was like a storm that would stop after a while. If the spy was a familiar face to the lord, then there would be no end to this matter. She would deal with it extremely ruthlessly. A typical example was Su Ku's rebellion in the previous life. After 2 or 3 years of allegiance, no one expected this rebellion. The impact was also quite far-reaching. When the emperor mentioned Su Ku in his later years, he still hated him and had the urge to dig his grave and flog his corpse. It was difficult for the emperor to raise troops in the previous life, but he did not suffer many losses. It could be counted on one hand. The one that left a deep impression was when Qiguan Rang assisted the old lord, Prince Changsho. When the emperor was at the front line, he led the troops and almost destroyed the emperor's nest. The other time was when Su Ku secretly instigated several middle-level generals to rebel. When the emperor was in a stalemate with the enemy, he used false information to trick the emperor into leading 500 soldiers into Jinqichuan. There were still 7,000 soldiers lying in ambush in the Jinqichuan valley. Su Ku had planned for this for a long time. His plan was flawless. When everyone discovered the rebellion and led troops to reinforce the emperor, a day and a night had passed. TSK. If it weren't for Thief Lu's stupidity, courage, and arrogance, it wouldn't have taken you so long to realize that something was wrong. Su Ku's mockery was not unreasonable. The story of the wolf coming was often told. When the wolf really came, everyone could not believe it. Similarly, the emperor led the vanguard and frequently used the unconventional tactics. After a long time, everyone got used to it and their vigilance was greatly reduced. When she was plotted against by her trusted confidant and fell into danger, the civil and military officials in the tent did not react in time. Su Ku thought that His Majesty would definitely die. Even the people in the tent thought so. The military camp was preparing for the funeral. Unexpectedly, the people searching for His Majesty's body followed the bodies of the rebels and found His Majesty sitting in a daze in the middle of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. Wei Ci had never seen that scene before, but he could imagine it from someone else's retelling. From the valley to her feet, the short distance of 1,000 feet was filled with countless broken limbs and remains. Blood gathered into a blood-red trickle. The pool of blood converged in one place, and the yellow mud on the ground could not absorb all of it in time. His Majesty, who had always been high-spirited, showed a rare look of disappointment. His eyes were red and bloodshot. Su Ku betrayed us? Qiguan Rang replied in a low voice, yes. Death by 1,000 cuts. His Majesty took a deep breath and added expressionlessly, I'll do it. Qiguan Rang asked her, My lord, you don't need to bring Su Ku here for interrogation. Why did he betray us? Betrayal is betrayal. When he did this, he was already a dead man. His Majesty mocked in a hoarse voice, I have no interest in his growth story. What kind of past did he have, what did he go through, and what did he do? Is this the reason why he betrayed me? Qiguan Rang was silent. even if I don't interrogate him, I know why he did this. It was most likely for his old master. His Majesty sneered and said, he was so loyal to his old master, so I fulfilled his wish. He was willing to plot for his old master for many years to assassinate me, so he was also willing to bear the punishment of death by 1,000 cuts for him, right? Of course, in the end, Su Ke did not die by 1,000 cuts, but he was killed by His Majesty herself. His corpse was hung in Jianghu and could not be buried. The generals who accompanied Su Ke were not so lucky. They were almost all killed by His Majesty in one breath. His Majesty reprimanded whoever pleaded for them. During that time, everyone was in danger. Even if the counselors tried to persuade her with emotion and reason, telling her that killing so many generals at once would cause her to lose a lot of strength and ask her to think twice, they still did not have the determination to save His Majesty. His Majesty was determined to kill this group of rebels and traitors even if he was willing to suffer a great loss of strength. Wuxia remembered that after the Jiang dynasty was founded, a few officials who were on good terms with Su Ke wanted to take advantage of His Majesty's good mood to ask for mercy so that Su Ke's corpse could be buried. In the end, those officials were reprimanded by His Majesty. They were all ordered to be suspended from their duties and go home to reflect on themselves for 2 months. Until Wuxia drew his sword and committed suicide in his previous life, Su Ke's corpse was still hung in Jianghu. From this, it could be seen that His Majesty's attitude towards the betrayal of a trusted official was that he would bear a grudge for a lifetime. Therefore, Wuxia was glad that the traitors this time were minor characters. The Nan family and the gentry clans that the Nan family secretly colluded with were all wiped out by Yang Tao and his troops. The traitors were publicly executed by 1,000 cuts. This shock lasted for more than half a month before it finally subsided. Obviously, not much time had passed, but everyone had the illusion that it was a lifetime ago. The gentry clans of Nansheng, Fenzhou, and Jianghu were even more cautious. They were dispirited and listless, not daring to jump around for a short period of time. This was because they realized that the superiority of the gentry clans did not work in front of Jiang Pengji, a bandit tyrant. Her capital to establish a foothold in this chaotic world was not controlled by the gentry clans. She did things unscrupulously, committing murder, arson, and looting with a clear conscience. She was a smelly, hard, and stubborn rock in the latrine. The gentry clans, as precious goose eggs, collided with her. The gains did not make up for the losses. They could not afford to provoke her, could not afford to provoke her. The chaos on Jiang Pengji's side had just calmed down, but a new storm was brewing in the other two places, affecting the situation of the entire world. One was Qiguan Rang and Sun Wen of Zhangjiang Pass. When these two black-hearted people got together, their black-bellied index was off the charts. They would plot against whoever they wanted. The other was in Shui's side. His beloved concubine, the Princess of Xichang, was diagnosed to be more than a month pregnant during the new year. The new year was coming. And Shui, who had been suffering from an unmentionable illness for many years, had successfully gotten his beloved concubine pregnant. This was double happiness. And Shui was ecstatic. In his joy, and Shui rewarded the 3 armies to celebrate. Everyone was happy and harmonious. However, Nie Qing of Zhongzhou was not in the mood to celebrate the new year. The gloomy atmosphere of the Nie family was a stark contrast to Shui. Nie Qing had experienced the deaths of his father and father-in-law, as well as the betrayal of his cousin, Nie Yang. This allowed him to grow rapidly in a short year. Sadly, the speed of Nie Qing's growth could not keep up with the changes in the situation in Zhongzhou. Speaking of which, it made people sigh. Thinking back to when Nie Yang was still around, Nie Qing was the target of everyone's fawning. Chapter 1638. Outside, there were enemies eyeing covetously. Inside, there were hidden dangers. Everything was in chaos. The increasing pressure and the ever-present schemes caused Nie Qing to lose weight day by day. Not long after, he was so skinny that he was only left with bones. When all these heavy burdens fell on the young man's shoulders, his fine black hair turned white in just a few short months. Not only that, Nie Qing would often fall into a trance, his haggard appearance making people feel bitter. Who would have thought that this thin and frail young man in front of them was a high-spirited and carefree noble son of a landowning household 2 years ago? Anyone who saw Nie Qing's transformation couldn't help but sigh. However, no one would give up their ambitions just because they sympathized with Nie Qing. Even if Nie Qing had the intention to unite all the forces within Zhongzhou and form an alliance to resist Jiang Pengji's forces, would those who flaunt their seniority listen to Nie Qing? To them, the Nie family was like a starving camel that was still bigger than a horse. Nie Qing was still a stumbling block in their way and had to be removed. Even if someone was willing to temporarily stop fighting for the sake of the big picture, Qiguan Rang and Sun Wen were not just for show. How could they allow Nie Qing to reunite the scattered forces of Zhongzhou? As soon as Jiang Pengji led her troops to Jianghu, the two of them got together and formulated a series of plans against Zhongzhou. After picking and choosing, they finally decided to secretly support a puppet force. Although it was a puppet faction, it had a certain amount of connections and resources in Zhongzhou. It was a local faction that was born and bred in Zhongzhou. Back then, if it weren't for the fear of the Nie clan's despotic power and Nie Liang's methods, the leader of this force wouldn't have so easily submitted. TSK, you say that you're subservient, but you actually have the heart of a tiger. Qiguan Rang smiled as he read through all the information about this person. He said to Sun Wen curiously, it's a pity that his heart is higher than the sky, but his life is thinner than paper. If he was so ambitious, why didn't Nie Liang deal with him before he died? If we leave such a disaster alive, even if we don't make use of him, he will become a huge problem for Nie Qing in the end. Sun Wen didn't even bother to bat an eyelid. Although Nie Liang is talented, he is not a god. Zheng Hao was ambitious, but he was also smart. So many ambitious hidden dangers had been eliminated by Nie Liang, allowing Zheng Hao to slip through the net. Either Zheng Hao's schemes are deeper than we expected, and he even deceived Nie Liang's calculations. Either this person's ambition doesn't match his ability, and Nie Liang doesn't take him seriously. Sun Wen wasn't too worried about Zhongzhou. After his lord's torment, Zhongzhou had already been beaten half to a pulp and had become a fish on the chopping block. Qiguan Rang smiled and said, Zidao is right. Which category do you think Zheng Hao belongs to, Wenzheng? Qiguan Rang did not answer. The two old foxes looked at each other and smiled. Those who had been tricked by them did not know what would happen to them in the future. Feng Yi could barely understand what they were saying, but Sun Lan, who was not good at scheming, was still confused. Junior has a question. He was a studious student. If he didn't understand something, he would ask. Now, there were elders to guide him, learn more, and ask for guidance. When he could take charge of things by himself in the future, who else could he count on? Sun Wen asked, what is it? Sun Lan said, military advisor Qiguan said that Zheng Hao has the heart of a tiger and a wolf. He won't be willing to be a puppet. If we support him, will we really not be bitten? It was too embarrassing to be reared and trained by a dog, and then be bitten by the dog in the end. Sun Wen smiled but did not speak. Qiguan Rang asked Feng Yi, what do you think, Rongli? Feng Yi said, military advisor Sun also said that Nie Liang's calculations left Zheng Hao out. Junior thinks that Zheng Hao belongs to the latter. Ambition and ability don't match. Qiguan Rang asked again, what's the reason? Feng Yi said, although Nie Liang is Nie Qing's father, he spoils his son like he kills his own. If he helps Nie Qing clean up even the small gravel before he dies, he won't be able to become a practice target for Nie Qing to use magic stones on. This isn't really helping him, it's harming him. Qiguan Rang and Sun Wen didn't react. Feng Yi continued, moreover, since the two military advisors have chosen Zheng Hao, Junior boldly judges that Zheng Hao will not have the chance to grow into a dog that bites back. Therefore, Junior is not worried. If these words came from someone else's mouth, it would inevitably sound like flattery. However, Qiguan Rang and Sun Wen had watched Feng Yi grow up. They were well aware of her temperament. Qiguan Rang said, I originally thought that you and Feng Zi didn't really look like father and son, but now that I see it, there is one thing that you two share the same origin. Feng Yi asked, what is it? Qiguan Rang said, clever. Feng Yi didn't use a long explanation to reason and analyze. She only used the simplest information to deduce a conclusion. Although there was some element of opportunism, turning complicated things into simple things was also a kind of skill. This fellow Feng Yi has a bright future. Feng Yi smiled bashfully at the good-natured teasing of her uncles. Qiguan Rang and the others had finalized their plan. As a puppet being supported, Jianghu didn't think of himself as a puppet being controlled. His cooperation with Qiguan Rang and the others was mutually beneficial. Their positions were equal. Qiguan Rang and the others could plot against Zhongzhao through him. He could also obtain support through Qiguan Rang, accumulate resources, and then counterattack when he matured. Both sides had their own ulterior motives. To use an analogy, both sides were peacefully shaking hands and signing a contract on the surface, but behind the scenes, they were sharpening their knives. Qiguan Rang was waiting for the right time, while Jianghu was enduring hardships to gain courage. With the secret support of Qiguan Rang and the others, Jianghu gradually annexed a lot of territory and slowly gained confidence. He could even ignore Nie Qing's dispatches and orders. Under Qiguan Rang's instructions, he even caused Nie Qing a lot of trouble, sowing discord in the alliance plan proposed by Nie Qing. Jianghu's advisor was a little worried about the current situation. General, Qiguan Rang and Sun Wen under Lu Shi's camp are both her confidants. She left the two of them at Zhangjiang Pass with ill intentions. Cooperating with them is tantamount to asking a tiger for its skin. We might as well reconsider this matter. Jianghu waved his hand to interrupt his advisor. He sighed heavily and said, do you think I don't know this? However, this is our only chance to get rid of the Nie family. It wasn't easy for Nie Liang to die, and now his son has climbed over my head. He's just a naive and incompetent brat. What ability does he have to order me around? I know Qiguan Rang has ill intentions, but I still have to try. The advisor was also aware of Jianghu's ambition, but he still felt uneasy. To Zhongzhao, Jianghu's actions were treason and treason. If the aristocrats of Zhongzhao found out, not only would they lose the hearts of the people, but they would also be reviled by their descendants for thousands of years. Was it worth paying the price of eternal infamy for a moment of ambition? You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.